Sword of Coming Chapter 888. Xianxia Academy. The old scholar has traveled across the continent and returned to the Qin Confucian Temple. If you don't go back, I guess the Confucian Temple will have to come over and block the door and curse the street. Before leaving, the old scholar had a few words with the young Daoist priest. Xianxia's sorrow comes from it. Is this Master Chao's husband? The old gentleman is good-looking, but the problem is that the other party seems to be almost as poor as himself. Xiao Mo and Qin Pingon walked side by side in front, saying, "Your Majesty the Emperor, you can still pretend to be calm at the wine table, but when you leave, when you get on the carriage, your heartstrings become violent. Seems the sun brought him a lot of pressure." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's just talking about it and chatting casually. Smart people like to think more about what they don't have, good or bad. For example, I asked the Emperor, His Majesty, whether the literati discussed politics or not. The monk acted, "Do you want to ask your heart?" Nowadays there is no national teacher Yang. Those of the Song family who came from Weixiang in Huaxian County of the Daoist dynasty are taking the lead in the clan's mansion. These people are the most vigorous, jumping on the edge of the temple. Your Majesty don't care. The Daoist dynasty once erected a country's laws and regulations on a mountain of monuments, and a continent and a half of mountains and rivers south of Dadu and Dadu. In the past, the Daoist vassals, according to the agreement, were able to restore the country by virtue of their respective military exploits, so some countries began to demolish their borders. For those stone monuments on the mountain, the Daoist court abide by the rules and never intervene in other people's housework. It is better to let the officials from the Honghu Temple in the capital city or the Ministry of Ritual of the accompanying capital give a reminder or two. Another example is that there are many officials in the accompany capital at the moment. What do you think, Your Majesty, when it comes to the relocation of the capital? In fact, many issues are not complicated. For example, when other countries go to the monument, the Daoist dynasty is no longer a suzerain state, so what can I care about? It's just that Qin Pingon deliberately started with a trivial matter before, so that Emperor Song he would think more about everything afterwards. Moreover, the Emperor's Majesty is too eager to use Qin Pingon to serve as the teacher of the greatly state once and for all. Middle-earth Confucian Temple on Izhou Mountain, Daoist companion capital King Song Mu, Beiju Luzhou in the north, Tonggis Hao in the south. It's too simple to think again. Return to the capital together. Qin Pingon sent 3 letters. A letter from Feijin to his home in Luopa Mountain, informing him that he was about to return to his hometown there. I also sent it to Lu Jinglong, the sword sect of the Taihui Emperor, saying that the next sect is about to be created. You must participate in the celebration. The specific time is to be determined. Just when you cross continents and go south, remember to stay at the Daoist capital city and give pointers to Han Zijin's formation. This hometown is a female formation teacher from Qingtan's blessed land. His background and mountain origin are by no means simple. Among the monks of the earthly branches, Qin Pingon is actually the 2 most optimistic about her and Guling, not even Yuan Huajing and Song Su, 2 swordsmen who are very hopeful to be among the 5 realms. Rely on intuition. Also, the last time Changpu had a drink, Guan Yiran used the Inkstone Services Department to provoke a conversation, so Qin Pingon had to remind Dong Shuijing that he had to be careful of some jealous family elder brothers in the capital. Dong Shuijing's business methods can be called 5-8 flower gates. Among them is the matter of covering hilltops. They quietly monopolize the flowers, jade, wood and even spring water etc., and then spend money to let the various mountain mansions help make famous, and then distribute them to with a few or a dozen buyers. Dong Shuijing himself is often not involved in direct sales. Chao Gingxin Yuan Jingding Fuyu Wu Yuan. Everyone who has been an official in Longzhou has a share. Not talking about the mountain sects, just talking about the old Longqing Sun family and Fan family in the south. Anyway, as long as the friends introduced by Qin Pingon, they all seem to have become Dong Shuijing's friends. In Dong Shuijing's words, I am just a serious trader only earning money from rich people. It is estimated that there are not a few private ferry boats and Xianxia ferry boats that belong to Dong Shuijing under the names of others. Dong Banqing? It's almost Dong Banzhou. It is hard to imagine that this poor boy who dropped out of school in the past years in Lizhu Cave started his business by selling wontons and glutinous rice wine. It's just that no matter how rich it is, it doesn't prevent Dong Shuijing from being a waste in Lin Shou's eyes. For the same reason, no matter how high Lin Shi's cultivation realm is in Dong Shu's Wellbore, he is just a counselor. How useful is your Lin Shi studying? Isn't it a mess with yourself all the way? In the evening, Zhou Haijing moved a stool and sat in the yard to enjoy the coolness, holding an exquisite fan embroidered with ladies and butterflies, shaking it gently, and the hair on the temples and the neckline of the placket were fluttering. King Luo's small fan is fluttering with fireflies. She is very elegant. Everyone is like this. The two city boys at the door, they are determined to rely on her Aunt Zhou, a foreigner or a practicing family. Aren't they just the heroines of the master storyteller who play the world and play the world? A handsome young man named Wang Yan turned his back to the yard, sitting at the door holding his cheek in a daze. The tall young man sat leaning at the door, smiling, wishing that he could learn a fairy technique that could become the fan in Aunt Zhou's hand. Zhou Haijing bends both fingers pointing to Gao Yu. Gao Yu grinned and said, "Sister Zhou, when will I find a brother-in-law? Wang Yan and I can help set up the wine and collect the money." Zhou Haijing said lazily, "It's easy to ask for priceless treasures, but it's rare to have a lover." Gao Yu laughed and said, "Sister Zhou, what do you think of me? Why don't you just marry me? I will definitely give you up in the future." Zhou Haijing glanced at the young man. "I think you can still get along with Wang Yan, good brother. You will suffer a little today and he will suffer a little tomorrow. No one will suffer anyway. She is crippled with high oil and Aunt Zhou is really hurting her words this time. In fact, these two teenagers are both poor boys with fathers and no mothers. It is impossible to say that it is decent, but it is crooked. In fact, there is no bad water in the stomach. The age of the teenager is still uncertain. When I see a lady with a bulging chest and a thin waist, I can't control my eyes. I think it's normal to take a few more glances. It's just that a teenager is a teenager after all. I really want to meet a girl I like. I guess I just hold hands during the day and can't sleep for half the night. But if a man sees a nice-looking woman, he has to think about where the bed is. It's just like the first encounter with a high oil who secretly likes a childhood sweetheart meets on the road. How dare to talk about it, just look at it and be full. On the contrary, that Wang Yan is more calm and he is more mindful at a young age. If you were born in a wealthy portal and could read books, you might really be a promising seed for reading. It's just that the reincarnation is the most involuntary. Zhou Haijing was absent-minded, listening to the two teenagers at the door, turning to talk about the strange and interesting things that happened recently in the capital, such as the two Jianghu sects. They had a fierce fight on the Gourd Street at night, and the nearby medical clinic these past 2 days. The business is very good. There are also two immortal masters who walked out of the deep mountains and old forests. They had a firm fight. Among them was a legendary sword fairy who was very angry. I heard that the old sword fairy stood there that night. On the street there was a long roar from the sky, the roof shattered, so many roof tiles shattered, the leaves fell to the ground, and then opened his mouth so as to spit out. A sword pill that kept spinning and not falling to the ground came out, swish, just it turned into a golden rope a few miles long, and dragged another master back to the ground. The storyteller on the Jiaobei bridge the next day said, "That sword must be based on seniority. He has to be regarded as an uncle from a different line of his clan." At that time there were good people who smashed the scene and asked the storyteller, "Why did you become a storyteller?" The old man was not surprised. He sighed and looked lonely. Suddenly he was shocked and said that he was indeed a fairy. Going astray, training is abolished. Regardless of the spectators and audience who were full of applause at the time, it is said that several ancestral secret books were sold on the same day. Of course I want to buy high oil, but the price is not agreed, it is too expensive. The storyteller offered 3 taels of silver, saying that this is still a matter of high oil. Otherwise don't talk about it. High oil and no lard to be a heartbreaker. Thinking of money is crazy. 3 coins are pretty much the same. Still ancestral is only a day or two, right? It's just that in the words of this moment, the tall young man still feels a little regretful, and feels that he might really miss a fate of the immortal family. Zhou Haijing rolled his eyes when he heard it. Sword fairy? The man in the green shirt you saw earlier is the real sword fairy on the mountain. She curled her lips. Yupujing was really scared to death. If this is an interested flower-picking thief, what should I do? Can't beat and beat. The other party also claims to be in charge of the earthly branch for a while, and she is a big girl with yellow flowers. Isn't it that every day shouldn't call the earth ineffective? Zhou Haijing is naturally not stupid. In the previous scene of drinking water and chatting with Qin Pingyun, there were many things that both sides had hidden and tucked away, which was human nature. Qin Pingyun hoped that she would take the initiative to find him, and the two sides could openly make a deal. The other party can't talk about being bully or even very sincere. When doing a business, the buyer has a clear sense of belonging, but if he can bear the greed, he can avoid being asked by the seller to sit on the floor and raise the price. In the same business Qin Pingyan, the buyer is forced to buy. How can he compare with the seller? Zhou Haijing actually had a dim sum at the time. After all, the status of the old man in the rivers and lakes is not low, especially in the battle of the battlefield. Yu Hong is good at selling fame and fishing reputation, and has earned a lot of goodwill from the mountains. Especially when Yu Hong is in the Dali dynasty, she found a first-class amulet, which made her feel more troublesome. If you want to take revenge, Fushitang and several martial arts must kill everyone and live by yourself at the same time. It's just that Zhou Haijing is accustomed to going through the rivers and lakes single-handedly after all, and she really doesn't want to be extravagant, sloppy and watch others wince. It's not her style of acting. 223 lives, one life for one life. Zhou Haijing doesn't want one more life than Yu Hong, but he can't have one less life. In the twilight at the corner of the alley, a romantic and suave strange man walked out. This is Su Lang's second visit to Zhou Haijing. He has just obtained a secret order from the Department of Criminal Justice. He will soon leave Beijing to settle in the south of Aquarius. He is responsible for secretly building a Jianghu school in the old Baishuang dynasty. Later, if the scale of this sect meets the requirements of the big plan within the Department of Penalty, Su Lang will be able to retreat and be promoted to second-class worship. For Su Lang, it's not a chore, there is no place in life. As a visiting ceremony, Su Lang brought a pot of Xianxia fermented rice on the mountain today, and a paper-wrapped crispy pork as a snack. Gao Yu pointed his eyes, saw the uninvited guest who was out of place, and stabbed his friend with his elbow. Is also a master? Compared to the man in the green shirt who wore cloth shoes a few days ago, the man in front of him was hanging a piece of green bamboo at his waist and carrying a sword. He obviously looked more like a master. Wang Yan turned his head and looked around and said, like. Gao Yu immediately patted his and got up, trot to the master and asked, "Who is this master looking for?" In fact, the teenager guessed with his butt and he knew that he was rushing to Aunt Shou. Otherwise, what is the picture? Although there are some prostitutes in the alley in front of them who do skin and flesh trades, the man in front of them is definitely not good enough. Su Lang turned a deaf ear. The tall young man walked sideways, sullenly said, "I can help lead the way, the master is willing to reward a few cents, that's the best." The two teenagers once stole a set of God of Wealth costumes from the Opera Garden. At the end of the new year, they went to a place a little far away to find those shops to visit the door, New Year's greetings. Beating and scolding the God of Wealth at the New Year's pass will give you some copper. Su Lang never paid attention to this sneaky market boy and walked straight to the door. Zhou Haijing stood up, shook the fan, slapped her shoulder once, came to the door, glanced at the flask in Su Lang's hand and smiled sweetly. "Next time you'd better bring a flask of Changchun Palace wine. Good wine makes people greedy." Su Lang said helplessly, "Miss Zhou is embarrassed by me. The price is expensive. It's okay to say that she can afford to bite her teeth. It is this Changchun fermented wine which has always been priceless in Beijing. The dignitaries have been divided up, and it is not the turn of outsiders like me. Nowadays on the Aquarius Mountain, whether you can drink the Changchun Palace Immortal brew or not is a status symbol. Changchun Palace is the local power of the Song family of Dali. Although there are no monks in the 5 realms for the time being, the Song family has a lot of support for Changchun Palace. In the Longxing land of the Song family, among several mausoleum guards, there is a Grand Master of Changchun Palace. Seeing that the two teenagers were still going to be door gods, Zhou Haijing held Gao Yu's head and twisted his wrists to make the tall teenager turn around and kick on his buttocks again. No matter how good-looking a woman is, she can't let go of fragrant farts. "I'm hungry. Just feel the chicken and eat it as candy, and it's everywhere and you'll be full." After dismissing the two teenagers, they went back to the yard and stretched out their hands to drive a bench from the house and threw them to Su Lang. When they stretched out their hands again, Su Lang threw the oil paper bag to Zhou Haijing. Zhou Haijing drank and ate crispy meat alone, his eyes gleaming, and said, "When I took the Xianxia ferry for the first time, I thought that I would also open a wine shop in the future. I had to let the entire Xianxia ferry in Aquarius. They all help me sell wine. Teske at the end of the year I will convert the ferry money into yellow and white things. The Golden Mountains and the Silver Mountains are really beautiful after thinking about it. Su Lang just smiled and drank, not taking it seriously. If Zhou Haijing really wants to make money from the gods, somewhere on the mountain, as long as she is willing to be sassy, she will make a large sum of money every year by relying on the title of worship and guest. After all, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Yu Hong is old and he is descending from the mountain, but Zhou Haijing is still on the way up the mountain. Once she succeeds in reaching the end, the scenery is endless. Let's talk about Tongya Island in the south. Before the mountains and rivers sink, there were more than 100 countries in the past, but only a few martial arts fighters. It seems that Wu Tan and Huang Yiyun are also Wu Sheng. As for Iase Hao, where martial arts are weak, there is only one person from Lei Gongmiao Peiaxiang. If you don't count the divine continent of China, Haoran's remaining 8 continents are evenly distributed. It is roughly a statutory rule that one continent has 2 or 3 top martial arts, sitting in the mountains and rivers. Zhou Haijing quipped, "Aren't you having a good relationship with General Shi? You don't know that when I was in the martial arts I heard the old gang leader mention General Shi, a person as big as the sky. According to the old gang leader, put it on the wine table. A fart, it's almost like thunder." Su Lang smiled and said, "Is there anything else?" Knowing that Zhou Haijing was talking about that General Long Shuo, a 4th-rank miscellaneous general of the Dalibian army, for the vassal states of Aquarius in the early years, he was indeed an overlord of heaven. After leaving his hometown in the early years, Zhou Haijing kept his name incognito, wandering through the rivers and lakes, and once worked in a water transportation gang that relied on the 5 realms of martial arts to obtain a position with real power. It's more vigorous than Yamazawa Yosu to make money. For example, go to the ruins of the ancient battlefield that is quite brutal while tempering the martial arts while digging 3 feet, picking up the ruined armor and a bundle of arrows, and then reselling them at a high price. The monks of the lower 5 realms who ate food under the guise of slaying demons and eliminating demons, or stealing the copper money from the common people's house, or deliberately taking the bronze mirror to help the wealthy and wealthy people exorcise evil, or pretending to be a teacher. The female sword Immortal of the fairy mansion, spitting wine, swiping her finger, secretly using martial arts, tossed up a scene of the Immortal family entwined with light, and helped to clean up those ghost houses that could not be sold at a low price. In fact, she relied on it. Real hard work, killing those ghosts and spirits, earning real hard money. The past is unbearable to look back, and it is bitter tears to talk too much. Drink alcohol. Zhou Haijing seemed to think of a past event and said, "Dali Iron riding a knife on the battlefield is really ruthless. She is now half 100 years old, but she is less than 20 years old. She has left her hometown, wandering around, and began to wander alone on the rivers and lakes. She has traveled north and south for many years. She has also seen many strong and powerful frontiers and arrogant soldiers from all over the world. The horse is strong, brave, and good at fighting and kills the people of the rivers and lakes. It is called a force like a bamboo, cutting melons and vegetables. As a result, when he encountered the Dali frontier army who was headed south of the horseshoe, it was just as vulnerable as a piece of paper. Once Zhou Haijing was full of food and supported it, and wanted to see the power of the Dali cavalry with his own eyes. I saw it for real. It really looked like a knife-cutting tofu, just like a young and strong man bullying a child wearing open crotch pants. But it was precisely that time that Zhou Haijing was found by the monks who accompanied the army of Dali Iron Cavalry, but the two sides did not do anything. However, she was also targeted by Nyang Lang of the criminal department, and was recorded by the criminal department of Dali, and her name was recorded in the book. Fortunately, Zhou Haijing was prepared long ago and did not show any more horses. Su Lang didn't intend to stay here for long. Before leaving, he gathered together and said, "Before leaving, I have to remind Miss Zhou to pay attention to Qin Ping." And Zhou Haijing smiled casually. "Is he a decent hypocrite? Like cheating money and cheating sex?" Su Lang shook his head. "On the contrary, Qin Pingon is very old-fashioned in doing things, but to be honest, don't be angry with Miss Zhou. You may not be the opponent of this person if you want to say that you are trying to do things. He is used to doing things afterwards. To ask about Xingyang Mountain, it was simply a ruin and a sect was demolished. In my opinion, Xingyang Mountain was destroyed by Qin Pingon. It was not an ancestor hall visible to the naked eye at all, but various ancestors. Brother Feng's complicated human mind." Su Lang didn't have a good opinion of Qin Pingon, but the Qingzhou sword Immortal was so arrogant that he didn't allow him to open his eyes and talk nonsense. Zhou Haijing nodded and said, "There is reason and reason. Su Lang also didn't know if she really listened to it, so he said nothing, got up and left. Zhou Haijing stood up, dropped the oil paper, shook the flask in his hand and smiled. I wish Su Jianxian all the best on this trip. After Su Lang left, Zhou Haijing began to shake the fan again and her thoughts shook with the wind. While sighing, she reminded herself not to sigh. It is easy to run away from her wealth. Just thinking about her hard work and poor family background, the woman couldn't help but sigh. Gao Yu suddenly yelled outside, Auntie Zhou, Mr. Qin is here again and I have a friend by my side today. Zhou Haijing followed Guling to the Jingshi Dao's Xianxia office last time. By the way, I saw the Prince Songsu. It's a pity that he didn't look like a slumber who would rob the people's daughters in Jingwu Songjiao, since Songsu. He was a sword repairman, so the second Prince Dolly would have no life to sit on a dragon chair and wear a dragon robe, and even the chance to entrust the king to the feudal clan. Zhou Haijing immediately shouted, Let Mr. Qin wait a moment. The old lady has to quickly touch up her makeup. Of course it wasn't that Qin Pingon had any wrong thoughts. Zhou Haijing stood at the door of the house, looking at Qin Pingon at the courtyard door and joked, My sect Master Qin, can you please stop pestering me as a married woman? Doesn't sound good to spread it out. I don't care, I'm afraid. It damages the reputation of sect Master Chen's innocence. Qin Pingon walked into the yard and said, Miss Zhou said and laughed. Zhou Haijing caught a glimpse of the entourage in the yellow hat and blue shoes, and asked, What is this young man? Qin Pingon smiled and said, Just call him Xiaomo. Zhou Haijing glanced at Xiaomo from head to toe, then smiled and asked, How small? Xiaomo smiled and said, The knowledge here is hidden and not revealed, and it is not enough for outsiders. Zhou Haijing choked for a while. It's still slick. If you are lying in the rivers and lakes outside the capital, you dare to molest the old lady like this and slap you in circles. Xiaomo noticed the content of the woman's heartstrings and smiled. After entering the main room, the two sides sat opposite each other as they did last time. Xiaomo said with his heartfelt words before, Qin Pingon nodded, and Xiaomo turned and left the yard. In the alley not far away there is a sneaky old man Jianxiu who is more than 200 years old and is watching the sea. The foremen are rotten and the young life is running out. No matter what happened anyway, Xiaomo went to chat with this old man who had followed several streets. Zhou Haijing took the initiative to take out a pot of wine, poured 2 bowls of wine and asked curiously, Sect Master Qin is really from a poor background like me as rumored to the outside world? Have you been a kiln worker in your hometown for several years? She was really ignorant before. It was because she was reluctant to spend money to look in the mirror. Zhou Haijing mistakenly thought that this young lord who was born in Aquarius Island was a son of a fairy family on the mountain, or she was born in a wealthy family. That's why she was particularly unpleasant. Just relying on Zhu Yin holding a golden rice bowl, I don't know the suffering of the people, and Zhou Haijing pretends to be an approachable gentleman with me. Just say that during that battle, why did a young sword immortal fail to accomplish anything? Look at that Fengshui Temple great sword immortal Wei Jin. Yu Qin Pingyan is not greedy for life and fear of death. What is it? Only after inquiring again did she realize that this was not the case at all. Zhou Haijing was born as a fisherman, and the other party was a kiln worker in an alley. One depends on the water to draft the water and the other depends on the mountain to eat the mountain. Is that the same origin? I had known this a long time ago. Zhou Haijing probably would have missed a few yin and yang words when we met last time. In addition, Pei Qian, who has the nickname Xianxia, is said to be a direct disciple of this young sword immortal. This made Zhou Haijing's impression of Qin Pingon a little better and he had to take a high look. Although the master didn't show up and never played a sword, he had taught such a good apprentice. The upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. It means that Yu Hong and a large group of disciples and grandchildren. There are very few exceptions what kind of master and what kind of apprentice teaches up and down the mountain. So this mountain lord of Cultivation who has been incognito for so many years, that he missed the tragic battle that fought all the way from the old dragon city to the capital of Dali, most of it was a little bit distressed. A woman's heart has a needle on the bottom of the sea, 9 bends and 18 bends, but so? Qin Pingon just nodded. Zhou Haijing squinted his eyes, raised his wine bowl and took a sip. Really, there is the skill of cutting wood and burning charcoal? Do you know how to pick wood and seal the kiln? It takes 5 or 6 days to stay on the mountain. Can you survive the pain? Qin Pingon nodded and said, They are all fairly familiar. Zhou Haijing shook her head and said, I don't believe it. Qin Pingon didn't say anything. Believe it or not, don't care about me. I didn't drink your wine either. Anyway, the earlier deal will not be possible, and in the future the two sides will keep the water in the water. Qin Pingon is about to stand up and say goodbye, and then explain clearly the reason for today's visit. Anyway, just a few words. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, "What's the rush? The widow's door has been knocked twice. Besides, it's not a lone man and a widow, and I haven't finished a bowl of wine on the table." Why, I was right. Can you drink white water but can't drink bad wine? Qin Pingon hesitated. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, "Sect Master Qin will leave after drinking a bowl of wine at any rate. Don't worry, there is no poison or sweat medicine inside. The aphrodisiac is even more ridiculous. It's very expensive. How can I be willing?" Qin Pingon raised the wine bowl towards Zhou Haijing. She also lifted the bowl and each took a drink. Zhou Haijing squinted and said with a smile, "Being a kiln worker, if I remember correctly, it is a first-class official kiln work of the Dai dynasty. Do you still need to burn charcoal to make money?" Qin Pingon said slowly, "I'm just an apprentice, no more than a formal kiln worker. In fact, if I don't have much money, I have to find some extra livelihood to supplement my family. If it's an extremely cold winter, I can make 100 kilos of white charcoal on the mountain. $1 or $2 $5. Burning black charcoal saves effort and the market price is cheaper. It's just that we sell charcoal and the rich people in the small town collect charcoal and get one in the middle. I heard that the price difference is not small. When he enters the mountains to chop wood and burn charcoal, Qin Pingon would bring a jar of pickles and carry a large bag of rice. Next to the charcoal kiln, he would set up a shelter from the wind and rain, set up a stove to make a fire, and occasionally bake potatoes and simmer yam or something. Moreover, Qin Pingon learned a lot of crafts from Lu Xianying. Every time he entered the mountain, he carried a lot of guys, fished in a cage and arranged traps. But if he followed Old Man Yao into the mountains to search for soil, Qin Pingon would never dare to do so. Fancy. Zhou Haijing stepped on the bench with one foot and said in amazement, "In the past, in order to gain a long experience and see how the emperor lived, I used to sneak into a small palace in the first month of the first month, but I really saw it. Outside of a palace, these great worlds saw two lifelike door gods in colorful clothes, almost the same height as people, wearing silk satin-colored armor and real swords and guns. They made angry looks and scared me at first. It was a big jump, but when I leaned forward to touch it, Sect Master Qin, what do you think it was made of?" Without guessing, Qin Pingon said directly, "There are several small countries in the middle of Aquarius Island. There is a custom of erecting charcoal generals as door gods in the imperial palace. Every year they are invited out from the imperial treasury, and they will be brought back on February 2nd of the following year. The makeup is as new without the slightest loss. Please follow the rule at the end of the year. In the words of the rivers and lakes, charcoal is more expensive than living people. It is said that some 100-year-old charcoal generals are estimated to be contaminated with dragon energy and can survive. During that duty period, I could cruise in the imperial city every night, and it was better than the night travel in the city god temple, but I was not as knowledgeable as Ms. Zhou, but I heard that I hadn't seen these with my own eyes, so I was very curious." Zhou Haijing didn't doubt it anymore, so he asked straightforwardly, "You still have to ask the bottom of it this time when you come to the door. You have to ask if I have a hatred of Yu Hong to be satisfied?" Qin Pingon waved his hand and smiled. "I changed my mind just because I am about to leave the capital, so I am here today to remind Miss Zhou that I will seek revenge with Yu Hong in the future, and accidentally caused an endless misunderstanding. Furthermore, remember not to bother the two seniors in the Fushatang in Yu Hong. One is called Zhu Fengxian and the other is called Yu Kangmeng. Now the two seniors are both elders of the Fushatang. They have just joined the gang not long ago, but in fact they are just gangsters. After eating, I hope that no matter what happens in the future, I hope that Miss Zhou will open up to them so that they can withdraw." Zhou Haijing sneered and said, "Some people are in disputes with swords and they have no eyes. Whoever says a word may be killed on the spot. Sect Master Qin is not the kind of viciousness that does not know the martial arts fight. Is it a bit embarrassing for me?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "If the two seniors are among them, Miss Zhou can speak to them in advance and say that I am Miss Zhou's friend. If the two seniors insist on not retreating, then they must blend in with the grievances of others. Then it can only be his destiny." Zhou Haijing hesitated. "Yes. But just believing that Lord Qinshan owes me a little favor?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Yes. Zhou Haijing said suddenly. In fact, Sect Master Chen doesn't look like a sword fairy but more like a scholar. The man who lived as a schoolmaster in a foreign country once said that there are sages, and the original intention of studying is yuan. I once said to her that the ants dare not cross if the young children draw the road with charcoal. Zhou Haijing used to sleep around an ancient site. In front of a hall, there was a bronze statue of an immortal holding something empty-handed. The laurel tree was ruined, the moss was all over the ground, the palace was barren, and the weeds were overgrown. Almost every time she encounters a man who prides himself on being an autumn wind guest, patrolling the night on horseback, joking, saying that she worked hard to refine her alchemy and seek immortality and dreamed of immortality. Zhou Haijing walked all the way and the figure disappeared at dawn. It was a strange dream. Before leaving home, she asked the schoolmaster to help her dream interpretation. He said it was a kind of fate. Zhou Haijing raised her head and drank the wine in the bowl and put down the empty bowl. She stared at the white bowl and bowed her head and said, Sect Master Chen is a cultivator. I must know that there is a saying on the mountain that we are reborn as human beings. It is not easy. Qin Pingon nodded. It's not easy. Zhou Haijing said solemnly, the place where I was born and raised must be repaid. Qin Pingon answered, if you can't avenge your gratitude, you must avenge it. Zhou Haijing raised her head, revealing an expression of surprise that could not be concealed. Life is alive, there are people who are wronged and there are debts to repay. The children of the arena, there are gratitude for gratitude and revenge for revenge. Qin Pingon said indifferently, otherwise what do we work hard to do in martial arts? Zhou Haijing hesitated for a moment and took the initiative to pass the wine bowl, about to want to touch a bowl and take a drink. In fact, Qin Pingon was more hesitant and he lifted his wine bowl and gently touched him. Snakes belong to the river and the drunkard also walks in the water. Zhou Haijing drank it in one sip, wiped the corners of his mouth and wondered, isn't Sect Master Chen a sword immortal? Where do you start with the hard work of martial arts? Knowing that Qin Pingon is a great master of martial arts that is destined not to be low, but I always feel that compared to the other sword immortal status, martial arts is a ramification. Qin Pingon shook his head and smiled. Learning boxing used to help me renew my life. How dare you not worry about it? Relatively speaking, practicing swordsmanship, especially becoming a swordsman, is a very late thing. Zhou Haijing asked, are you a martial artist of the end? Qin Pingon nodded and said, otherwise why should I be Pei Qian's master? Zhou Haijing asked tentatively, Sect Master Chen, are you looking at me? Qin Pingon said helplessly, Miss Zhou, don't make this kind of joke. Zhou Haijing smiled and said, then what are you doing with me? If Qin Pingon is a mountaintop state, Zhou Haijing would still be half believing, can he say the end? Then why don't you go to discuss with Song Chongjing? Xiao Mo appeared at the entrance of the courtyard, but there was an old man beside him. Gao Yu and Wan Yan, who stayed in the alley and didn't leave, were a little surprised because the old man, who was familiar, was the storyteller who spit under the overpass and sold a few cheats by the way. Xiao Mo explained to Qin Pingon with his own voice that this old sword repairman in the Sevuing realm, who claimed to be proficient in physiognomy, caught the young man's lifestyle at a glance, and observed the young man's temperament for a period of time, and felt that he could inherit part of it. The mantle of Taoism is just a matter of sword making. The old man saw the man in the green shirt in the courtyard and immediately converged his mind, bowed his head and clasped his fists and said with his heart, the big hidden in the morning, the small hidden in the wild, the old can only play in the market, not as good as Qin Jianxian. Qin Pingon clasped his fists in return, and laughed with his heartfelt voice. It is gratifying and congratulating for the Taoist friends to accept disciples. Zhou Haijing leaned against the courtyard gate and asked, Qin Pingon, are you really a stop? Qin Pingon treated people with sincerity and replied, it's true. Zhou Haijing's eyes were strange. What's the scene on that mountain? Qin Pingon said, it's not high enough. Zhou Haijing looked at the eyes and expression of the man in the green shirt. Damn, how come this guy looks so handsome? It seems that my old lady is drinking too much. Could it be this guy who poured ecstasy soup into his drink? Zhou Haijing smiled to herself. Do not delay other people's apprenticeship and apprenticeship. It was mainly Zhou Haijing's inexplicable smile looking at people. Qin Pingyun and Xiao Mo returned to Rinyun Yun building. Xianwei was asleep in the side room. In the alley outside the door of Zhou Haijing's house, The old man picked out the reason and told Wang Yan to follow his own practice. The delicate young man glanced at Gao Yu, hesitated for a moment and nodded, only to say to Gao Yu that he would definitely come back. The old man told Wang Yan not to bring anything, so he left the alley together. Gao Yu actually hoped that Wang Yan would leave like this and also thought that Wang Yan could not leave, stay company and share weal and woe, but his good friends eventually left and it seems that it is not bad. In short, the heart of a tall young man empty. Zhou Haijing looked at the boy with a complicated mood, squatting at the door, holding his head. She sighed, gave Gao Yu an address somewhere in the capital, waved her hand and said, "You follow the address to find someone. His name is Su Lang, the guy who brought the wine in front, so I told you to find him. Let him teach you some martial arts. As for how much you can learn, it depends on your own ability." Gao Yu suddenly turned his head, choked up and said, "Thank you, Aunt Zhou." Zhou Haijing smiled and said, "Little bastard, call Sister Zhou." Gao Yu grinned and ran away. He planned to go home to pack up the package first but ran to the corner, turned his head and shouted, "Auntie Zhou, remember to tell her for me tomorrow. I will go to the rivers and lakes." Zhou Haijing didn't say anything. What's so good about the arena? It's just that for a teenager, it's better to walk through the rivers and lakes no matter whether it is good or bad in the end, whether it is returning to the hometown in good clothes or desperate, it is better than watching the rivers and lakes for a lifetime. At dawn, Ning Yao's retreat ended and inside the inn room he stepped to the Ringyun Iyun building on the side of Chen Pingan. Xianwei was squatting at the door of the wing with Xiao Mo eating breakfast together. Xianwei saw the woman carrying the sword box, shocked as a heavenly man, and silently extended a thumb to the Master Chow. Chen Pingan didn't have any packages that needed to be prepared. He just asked Xianwei to hurry up after he finished eating, and was about to leave Dai capital. Xianwei finished eating 2 bites, clapped his hands and was about to greet Xiao Mo. Don't let Master Chow Xian wait for a long time, only to find that Xiao Mo had stood up and stood aside. "Take it, this dogleg." A group of people went to the inn to check out. The old shopkeeper smiled and joked, "Qin Xiaoxiao is going back to the house? Didn't get a fame and will not stay for a few more days? Not to mention that he is bigger than the old master of the fish, so he can't lose to Zhou Haijing. Jianghu girl, right?" Chen Pingan leaned against the counter and said with a smile, "I went back, the capital is expensive, I want to stay a few more days, but I don't agree with the money in my pocket. Next time you come to Beijing, if you are still willing to come to a small store to settle down, I will give you a 10% discount. If the shopkeeper doesn't fold in half even if I come to the capital next time, I won't come to your side. Have you bargained like this? It's a pity that you don't do business, Master Chen." The treasured girl of Lu Lao's shopkeeper, named Lu Chai with a small print of Tammy, got up early. She was already busy with a rag and a bucket now, but she was still a little sleepy at the moment. Although the girl is a little confused about looking forward to the world and thinking about being a heroine, in fact she usually helps in the shop and does trivial things so that she can earn some money from her father. It's easy to spend money and it's hard to make money, blame yourself. WWW. Novel. Come too fast. Chen Pingan will remind Zheng Yi that he can travel to Dali capital in the future. If it is predestined, we will meet each other. The girls saw Ning Yao and shouted, "Master Ning." Ning Yao shook his head and said, "I am not your master." The girl grinned and shouted casually, "Master Ning, you don't need to be so serious," and asked, "I'm leaving? When will you come?" Ning Yao smiled and said, "It's hard to tell." The girl screamed, still a little lost. "But it's okay, the children of the rivers and lakes, you can afford to put it down, there will be a period of time after the green mountains and green waters." The old shopkeeper breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the girl didn't make a fuss about running away from home. The capital was set up in the capital to supervise the yamen, which was under the control of the Ministry of Industry, the Water Department healer and the Du Shui Qin clerk. They were all high-ranking officials in charge. Dealing with sluices and dams and riverbed dredging is considered to be an official meal, not a big profit, but at any rate it can protect the harvest from droughts and floods, plus the ability to plant elm and willow and maintain it, and there is some extra income. The second son opened a satin shop in the north of the capital, and he was also regarded as a family and established a business. So the old shopkeeper now only has the least worry-free baby girl in front of him. The reason for the worry is of course because it hurts the most. The group boarded a southbound ferry and left Beijing to return home. Now Nujiadu, with the continuous withdrawal of the Dali garrison, there are more and more frequent ferry boats. Thanks to the existence of Piyun Mountain and the confluence of the three rivers, Nujiadu has become one of the important hub ferry crossings between the north and south routes of Dai. Qin Pingan Ningyao. Xiaomao Xianwei. There were only 2 people when they came and 2 more when they went. A green shirt. Ning Yao was wearing a golden robe and carrying a sword box. She didn't bother to use any tricks. Xiao Mo is always dressed in a shabby yellow hat and blue shoes. After going to the Jingshi Dao Jingya office once, Xianwei has become more courageous, and he is ready to make himself a peachwood sword that is standard for the Daoist of the Tianshi mansion. 1 person in 1 room. This is the first time Xianwei has taken the Xianxia ferry with the white cloud bird, and he only feels that he has finally made a fortune. Ning Yao is reading in the house. Qin Pingan took Xiao Mo and Xianwei to the bow to enjoy the scenery. At this moment, I listened to a large group of young monks who got together nearby, chatting over there without any heartfelt words, speaking without restraint as if they came from several different mountain sects. They had just met at the ferry, and after boarding the ship, just make an appointment together, those female training fighters of Yingyan Jianyan, but they are out of the same school, go down the mountain to travel. This is how the incense love comes. Because there are so many fairies, the male chi practitioners began to show off their magical powers. Some showed their literary talents, bowed their heads and muttered, talking about the grief of subjugation, the pain of breaking the family and the sorrow of life experience. Time is easy to pass away, life is hard. For a long time I shed tears. There are people who accidentally reveal their wealth, but in fact this is more immediate than trembling with talent. In the young immortal genealogist, no matter how rich they are divided into 3, 6 or 9 classes. Those who own a private ferry are really rich. Generally speaking, only the children of Taoist couples in Daxian Mansion have this kind of treatment. Then there is the genus of Fuyafaizu who eats money. After that, when he is away from home, the immortal master can ride immortal birds and different animals. In the end, of course, it is to travel through the mountains and rivers with 2 legs. If you are in a hurry, you can at most use some magical runes and armored horse runes with ordinary materials and relatively low rank. Qin Pingan thought of Fan Air from Old Longqing, who had an osmanthus island under his name. As for Lu Yuzhou of Ai Aizhou, forget it, it can't be compared. Xianwei's ears are listening, it's all experience and world. Somehow I talked about Piyun Mountain and Yeo Banquet. Xiao Mo knew it in his heart. Xianwei, a half-hearted gas trainer, couldn't do it accurately with the rumored rumors of the arena, but adding these monks from the genealogy on the mountain, it would be the same. Besides, Xianwei said the truth, which is quite reasonable. People in the rivers and lakes only have the wrong name instead of the wrong nickname. Weiyu. Xianwei felt that this Dao name seemed quite domineering after hearing too much. 1 continent night tour, who is it? Xiao Mo hesitated for a moment and asked, Hi son, that Wei Shanjun? Qin Pingan smiled and said, I only talk about appearance, grace, elegance, ancient style and forget the vulgar. If you say that you live in the world, you are sentimental and righteous, I really can't pick out any shortcomings anyway. It was only the first time that the 2 sides met. When Wei Bo was still the landlord of Kaidenshan, it was more funny, and it was different from the image of Wei Shanjun in the Piyun Mountain today. Xiao Mo nodded, understanding. There should be something in your own son's words. Is it an exception to remind yourself that gifts should not be taken lightly? It seems that Wei Shanjun's nickname is definitely not a mere name. Or did Qin Pingan think of what Xiao Mo was thinking, or else he would definitely scream for Wei Shanjun. For these years Weibo has not been easy. The reputation of the Piyun Mountain Night Tour Banquet has been spread to the Central Earth Shenzhou and Beiju Luzhou. Home over there. A small town in Huaihuang County, there are many places of interest and historical sites. Nowadays there are more immortal visitors like Crucian Carp who cross the river. For example, the Wenwu Temple built on the tombs of gods in Laozishan is just like the capital city in the city temple of a country. In fact, unlike the city temple, there is no level of distinction between the Wenwu temples of all countries in Jiuzhou. The civil servants and military commanders of the country, but the Wenwu temple built by Dali in these 2 places, occupying a large area, the Sulongjing site is definitely going to be seen. The peach blossoms on both sides of Taoya Alley are very strange. The flowers bloom and fall are different from other places. In recent years there are often foreign tourists who owe hands to steal the peach branches, and then they will be escorted to the county office immediately, and they have to pay a large sum of money to the gods. If you don't have money, You will have to eat a prison meal if you don't have enough security. In addition, there are Chao's ancestral residence in Nipping Lane, Yuan's ancestral residence in Erling Lane, peach blossom cakes at the New Year's shop in Qilong Lane, and the wine shop at Huang Xinyang's house. Although they sell ordinary drinks, women are already old. The old look was decayed, and he was replaced by his son and daughter-in-law to inherit the family business. It is said that the Saint Wan Qiong is a frequent visitor to this restaurant. Longquan Jianzong's friend Lu Xianying, who is also a sword fairy, and the two of them are here to get drunk together, so the outsiders have traveled here so far. Can't they sit down and feel immortal? It's a pity that the Lost Mountain, which is famous for moving a continent, is shaped like a closed mountain, and it doesn't entertain guests, so you have to stop outside the mountain. Then there are the small and large porcelain shops in the small town. The selling price is much lower than that of Xianxia Ferry in other places. Although you don't need fairy money, who doesn't like to buy a bargain? What's more, I have come to the boundary of Longzhou. If I don't buy a piece of porcelain that is famous for a continent, I will take it back. It's like a trip in vain. In Huaihuang County, many of the dragon kiln openings in the past were all official kills. Some of the kiln openings were supervised and inspected for imperial kills. Naturally, they were the highest-ranking official kills. Now the level is strict and the etiquette system is clear, otherwise it will not break so many defective porcelains and eventually pile up an old porcelain mountain. Time has changed, and now some of the kills have lost their official kiln status and have to be converted into second-class folk kills that are no longer supervised and purchased by the government. Several of the kiln mouths were secretly acquired by Dong Shuijing. He paid a lot of money to hire many dragon kiln masters who had already stopped working, and asked them to come out of the mountain again. The standard is still very different from the porcelain without them. Not to mention these masters who are all idle masters. Coupled with the new owner's good money, the salary is very impressive in a year, let alone the apprentices they brought out are not bad, they are solid craftsmanship produced year after year. Therefore, the various Longzhou porcelains produced by these folk kills are still no different from the officially supervised and folk-fired, in the early official kills. Porcelain wares were sold in endlessly, so they were sold to the bottom of the continent and became the first-class study offerings for scholars from all over the world. However, Dong Shuijing still likes to hide behind the scenes. Qin Pingon lay on the railing, pointed to the distance and introduced, "You have reached the border between Longzhou and Hongzhou, and you can dock at Nujiadu for at least one incense stick." Xianwei raised his eyes and looked into the distance. He was too far away and could not see any flower heads. He just asked, "Master Chao, just now I heard those young gods say that the Nujiao ferry is not a normal source of wealth, except for the Dei military ferry. Every ferry on the mountain has to pay a large amount of berthing fees. Doesn't it mean lying down and collecting money every day? There is such a good thing in the world. It's a big ferry, it is Mr. Wei Dashan and the surname Qin. Owned by the sword fairy Goodfellow," Qin Pingon explained with a smile. "Each Xinjia ferry boat will consume a lot of local landscape spirit. If you don't spend money on the gods, you will soon be fishing and your spirit will be exhausted. If you really do this, look at those in the dragon. Will the genealogy masters and the gods of various landscapes in the state and land boundary rebel? So you can't just look at making money and not looking at people spending money." Xianwei sneered and said, "Master Chao, these words are boring. It's obviously a way of making money from the Daijin Dujin, so you should be the half-master of the ferry. Isn't it right?" Someone is speechless. Xianwei asked again, "This ferry will stay at Nujiadu for 2 hours. Shall we disembark and visit the mountains and rivers together? I heard that the porcelain thief in Huaihuang County is very expensive. I don't have to worry about selling it at all. As long as you buy it, you will earn a steady profit. Don't lose, I have to buy a few. I still have a gold ingot on my body. I just don't know if 2 hours are enough for me to go back and forth from the ferry to the town. I heard that the rules are heavy there and the ferry master can't travel far away from the wind, so he can only hike." Qin Pingon said, "Our destination this time is Nujiadu." Xianwei turned his head and said in doubt, "Let's disembark right there? Master Chao, your school mountain is located in Longzhou? Then aren't we neighbors with Wei Dashan? No wonder they used to set up a stall at Jin Sidu to make money, but they were all poor. If you want to say that you are the pauper under the mountain, is it possible that Master Chao or Qin Shanju is the pauper on the mountain?" Xianwei asked cautiously, "You are called the Lord Qin Shan, and the surname Qin Jianxian, who has an eyebrow with Wei Shanjun, also has the surname Qin. Do you recognize it?" Qin Pingon suppressed a smile and nodded. Of course I do. Xianwei breathed a sigh of relief. There is such a relationship, then you definitely don't have to go to the night banquet, right? Qin Pingon thought for a while. That seems to be right. After being said by Xianwei, Qin Pingon discovered that he had indeed never participated in Wei Boss night banquet. It's weird, this immortal Wei is talking nonsense around as if he can always tell a certain truth in the end. It is really not easy to achieve what Jing Juzhong said incorrectly. The boundaries of Huaihuang County, Dai Court and Piyun Mountain each have a mountain and water restriction. If monks are standing on the ground, it will be a scene of clouds and fog all the year round. It is a bit similar to the Sea of Clouds in the old Dragon City in the early years, making a yawning Dixian. It is difficult to truly observe the scenery of the mountains and rivers. Unless you disembark and land, you still need to hang the sword talisman to protect the wind, overlook the mountains and look a little more. Zushan Luopashan Zushitang is on Jisa Peak. The remaining 3 vassal hills, Baolu Mountain, were leased to the Longquan sword sect for 300 years. However, Lu Xianyang, who was newly appointed as the lord of the Longquan sword sect not long ago, made a weird deal with Luopa Mountain, allowing Luopa Mountain to spend money. The 3 hills were rented back for almost 270 years, and Lu Xianyang was given 27 guyu money. The back of the pinfish was leased to Juchai Island. It has a Xinjia ferry and Nyojiao Mountain in Bayaguzi. Qin Pingon bought Jinju Mountain with only 1 gold fine copper, because the mountain on the easternmost side was too small and too close to the town, so construction was never started. In addition, there are Huimeng Mountain, Huanghu Mountain, Cinnabar Mountain, Weixiao Peak, and the worship platform on the westernmost side. Therefore, Luopa Mountain has already possessed 11 vassal hills. Xiaomo helped his hat and squinted. A lot of doorways can be seen at once. The first is the Dragon Cliff of Longji Mountain, the second is the Piyun Mountain where Wei Shanjun is located, and then the mysterious layout of those dragon kiln mouths, as well as the setting of Fulu Street and Taoya Alley. Obviously, it is the masterpiece of Mr. Sanshan Jioho. And that seemingly inconspicuous stone arch bridge. If you bump into this place without knowing it, you must be careful. A small town in the mountains to the west, the intricate and complex veins, the energetic bullfighting kendo air luck, the prosperous literary and martial luck, the abundant landscape aura, and the subtle but quintessential aftermath of the divine Tao, layered on top of each other. Stacked, crisscrossed, extremely chaotic. It was just a landscape, and it would give Xiao Imo the illusion of confronting a certain 14th-level sword repairman. And it's like being face-to-face close at hand. It's just that for some reason there is a huge blank space in the mountains. It's like several hills have been relocated. Xiao Imo closed his gaze and said with emotion in his heart, "The sun is practicing here and he can't make a single step wrong." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Thinking is complicated. It is a mess that no one except the patriarch of the 3 religions can solve. Simple thinking is just that the mountains and the water flow and everything stops and goes." Xiao Imo said sincerely, "The sun's heart is unparalleled in the world." Qin Pingon was so angry that he patted Xiao Mo's hat on his head. "It's almost done. When you arrive at Luopa Mountain, collect your supernatural powers without a teacher. And remember that the mountains in my family are the least provocative of you." Xiao Imo smiled and helped his hat. "Remember. Mujiadu." In a relatively secluded place, there is a white jade railing built on the edge of the cliff. There is a little girl in black carrying a golden pole on her shoulder, holding a trekking pole and slung a small cotton bag. The little girl widened her eyes and looked into the white clouds in the distance. She didn't know how many times she asked the same question. "Jingqing, why hasn't the good man Mountain Lord come yet?" On the side, Qin Lingjun was sitting on the railing with Bai Xian, playing boxing with a folding fan in hand, and whoever lost was beaten. These 2 uncles, one does not need to practice, the other does not need to practice swords. Usually panic at leisure, of course they are happy to come here with the millet grains. The big white goose had already hurried to Tongyi's Hao in advance, and took the wind and kite ferry that was located in Pasan Mountain, followed by Chao Qingqing, Zongfuzi, Tui Wei and Sui Right. As for Pei Qian, I don't know why he went to Wafudi. Qin Lingjun said casually, "What's the hurry?" According to the time when the ferry boat docked in the past, there are almost 2/4 of an hour left. Besides, for these mountain ferry boats, the wind direction is erratic and the difference of half an hour is common. Millet scratched his face and nodded. Qin Lingjun glanced at the millet grains. craned her neck and widened her eyes eagerly. She stared at a place. How long has it been? Earlier, I received a letter from the master of Feijian from the capital. I learned that I would take a certain ferry back to Luapa Mountain today. Therefore Xiaomili went out early this morning. As soon as the morning broke, the patrol had already been completed. And then waited at the door of Qinlingjun without knocking, just as the door god. As a result, after arriving at the Nujiaoshan ferry, the three of them still waited here for a full hour, which is not good. Brother Bai Xian's forehead has already been wrapped. Wait any longer, it is estimated that they will have to grow horns. Qinlingjun jumped up, pinned the folding fan close to his waist and began to jump on the railing. His sleeves crackled, his mouth chattering in a hurry like a law. He went crazy and then he fell into dantian. Collect work. Bai Xian rolled his eyes. From the sleeve I took out a small and exquisite purple sand teapot and sipped the tea. It was the wolfberry tea. Before Nuanshu returned to the mountain, he saw Bai Xian, who was keeping a stall inside the pavilion, and he told him about teapots and tea drinking. Bai Xian knew that Uncle Bai had been cheated by Uncle Chen. Millet waited for a while but still couldn't see the shadow of the fairy and said softly, Jingqing, your spells don't seem to be very bright. Lu Chongrun walked around Baozhai today and came to the ferry to relax. By chance he saw a group of 3 people with millet grains. The dress of the little black girl was so eye-catching. Seeing Lu Chongrun's figure, Xiaomili immediately rushed over, stood still, straightened his waist and raised his head and said 3 titles in one breath. I have seen Island Master Lu Guanshi, Sister Lu. Lu Daozhu is a monk, Lu Guanshi is the love of the 2 families and Lu's sister is a personal friendship. Qinlingjun and Bai Xianyao held fists away, even if they had said hello. Anyway, Lu Daozhu is recognized as half of his own family, and he is polite and hypocritical. Lu Chongrun nodded to the 2 of them, then smiled and stretched out his hands towards the head of the millet grain. Xiaomili hurriedly shrank his neck and lowered his head and said in a panic, I can't touch it, I'm already so much shorter than Pei Qian. Lu Chongrun retracted his hand and asked with a smile, waiting for someone? Xiaomili looked around, lowered his voice and whispered quietly, waiting for the good man mountain owner and his wife. And the good guy Shanju said in the letter that he took 2 people home this time, but the letter did not say who they were. Of course, the millet grains have to come over so as to confirm whether there is a little girl with short winter melon in the first time. Lu Chongrun nodded, don't delay you and others, I have to go back to the fish first. Xiaomili said, Lu Island Master, I am free to look back, I will go to your mountain to be a guest. Lu Chongrun was a little strange why he suddenly got bolder. For many years this cute little water monster with the status of right guardian of Luopashan has stayed on the side of Luopashan, at most at the gate of the mountain, and will never go out. It's actually quite an exception to come to Nujiaoshan like this. But Lu Chongrun still agreed with a smile. She left the ferry in Yufeng. The dragon boat that was salvaged with the water hull back then was leased to the Dali Frontier Army by Luapa Mountain for free. When the imperial court returned the dragon boat ferry, it was so dilapidated that the costly repairs were even higher. The value of the dragon boat, turning over the ink, itself. When the 2 sides handed over the ferry, Zhu Lian from Luopashan didn't say a word. Later the dragon boat was transferred by Tui Dongshan to a blessed place in the Lotus Route, where it was repaired as new. Lu Chongrun has been in charge of dragon boat Fanmal very early, and has never thought of her as a temporary post for many years. The so-called going out experience of some disciples is actually confessed on the ferry, but the Luopashan side does things kindly and earns dividends every year. Returning to peaches and rewards for plums, Luapa Mountain took the initiative to set aside 2 treasures of feng shui rich in water transportation in the Lotus Route that is already the bottleneck of the first-class blessed land, so that the 5 daughters of Zhuchai Island's ancestor hall can practice or retreat there. Seek opportunities to break the boundaries. One is a part of the Nanshuan water hull, which was presented to Luapa Mountain by Shenlin, the source of Jidu Lingyuan Luzhou North Ju, and a stream presented by Longting Ho Liyuan. After Zhuchai Island moved out of Shujian Lake in the early years, it occupies a hill here. Although it is leased from Luapa Mountain, it is indeed a bit suspicious of being under the fence. Fortunately, it is destined to be peaceful, the landscape is alive and there are no neighbors on the mountain. The intrigue disputes and there is no messy bullying, and the fact that the sect makes money, it is also very stable. You only need to split the accounts with Luapa Mountain. The female repairmen of Zhuchai Island only need to be at ease to practice the Tao. Then the only thing that needs Lu Zongran's heart, there is only one, which is to be careful of the former Yumi, and later Miyu. Before, Yumi accompanied Nguan Shu to the back of the fish to give New Year greetings and presents. In addition, he had taken a dragon boat ferry several times. The most annoying thing is not this, but the Yumi who has been deliberately alienating Zhuchai Island female sisters. But the problem is that Yumi is unintentional, but Lu Chongrun's direct and repassed disciples are intentional, and each cares about Yumi of. Especially when Miye's true identity came to light, it turned out to be the sword fairy who shined in the old Dragon City battlefield and killed his enemies like hemp, and most importantly Miyu came from the famous sword spirit Great Wall. After coming and going there more on Zhuchai Island. Whenever he mentions Mi de Xianxian, his eyes shine and he always finds the opportunity to be a guest on Luopa Mountain, which makes Lu Zhongruan very angry. In this way, can they not do their best while working on the dragon boat ferry? Millet continued to return to the railing, waiting eagerly for the ferry. Suddenly I saw the sky ferry boat was as small as a mustard seed. Millet's face was full of surprise and he yelled with joy, Jing Qing, it works. In fact, how long has it passed since Qin Lingjun's previous immortal technique was used? Qin Lingjun sat on the railing but he didn't feel guilty and laughed. Qin Pingon used his water and cloud body to leave the ferry first, and instantly came to the railing of the ferry, reached out to hold the Tsing-yi boy's head and asked with a smile, "What is so funny?" Qin Lingjun wiped his face. Master finally went home almost crying with joy. Bai Xian with a large forehead continued to roll his eyes. Thinking of a serious matter, Bai Xian jumped off the railing and started to file a complaint. It was not easy to call the hermit from outside, so he used the name of the mountain lord. Shan Lord, if you don't come again we will be abducted. It's clean. Don't you know the mountain master that you Lao Jianxiu is too much? He worships the sword platform every day. He will stop by for the 9 of us and he is called pointing swordsmanship, especially looking at me. The look in my eyes, let alone a disciple who hasn't passed the door, is simply his long-lost son. He sees me Harry Shan. Honestly, it's not just gossip behind me, just like Lauer. I really can't be my master. Qin Pingan angrily smiled and said, just your vision is the highest. Is your realm high? Bai Xian's arms crossed his chest. There is one thing to say, nothing to say, far less than the mountain master, more than enough than Qing Fatty and the others. In another 3 to 5 years, leaving Sun Chun Wang's girl aside, I can pick one. 7. When Bai Xian saw Ning Yao he rubbed his eyes. He was right, it was Ning Yao. Bai Xian immediately shut up obediently. Yao Xiaoyan and Nalan Yubiao, these 2 girls are probably crazy. Especially that King Sun Chun who usually sees people with dead fish eyes and facial paralysis. When he saw Ning Yao he couldn't kowtow to recognize master on the spot. Bai Xian knows that King Sun Chun is very proud. Even if he is brought to the Luopa Mountain by the hermit, he still thinks about going to the colorful world and going to Fei Xingcheng, only to find Ning Yao to learn swordsmanship. Otherwise he likes the little girl. I would rather have no preacher and no master. Alas, I'm still young and naive. Ning Yao is the kind of apprentice who would accept apprentices casually. Besides, who is Ning Jianxian? She is our master's Taoist companion. You have a good relationship with the hermit. Can Master Ning Jianxian run? After all, it's the little girl's family and her brain is not bright. After the ferry docked, Ning Yao and the others came here. Xianwei looked around, not knowing where the top of Master Chao's mountain was. Mrs. Mountain Lord. The millet grains are a little embarrassing and I just can't get them when I want to give them to melon seeds. Sister called Ning failed because Pei Qian knew about it, so I had to keep a small account book. Ning Yao smiled and stretched out his hand. Xiaomi Lyle blossomed and quickly handed out a handful of melon seeds. Xiao Imo took out a heavy cotton bag from his sleeve, which was filled with golden melon seeds. Xiao Imo squatted down and smiled and said, My name is Xiao Imo. I am the sun's obedience. This is a meeting ceremony. The courtesy is light. Don't dislike the right guardian. Zhou Mili was stunned on the spot, frowning with 2 sparse and yellowish brows, giving gifts as soon as they meet? She hurriedly raised her head to look at the good man mountain master. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, just take it, don't be polite with Xiaoma, he is a good-for-profit boy. Then Qin Pingon whispered, it's a bag of golden melon seeds, which are golden melon seeds made of gold. What? Golden melon seeds? Is this still light? Ceremony is not light and affection is as heavy as a mountain. How could a good person like Mr. Xiao Emo suddenly pop up in the world? Is Mr. Xiao Emo an unexplored prophet? How do you know that you want a bag of golden melon seeds in your dreams? The little girl in black embraced the golden pole and the green bamboo stick and said funny thanks and then took the bag with her hands. The millet grains bent her knees and laughed and said, Mr. Xiaomo, the bag is so scary I almost wanted it. Can't hold it falling to the ground. Xiaomo squinted his eyes with a warm expression, and then slowly got up when Xiaomili took the bag. Qin Pingon touched the head of the millet grains. Hurry up and put it away. Millet nodded vigorously and finally put the bag into his beloved cotton shoulder bag. Xiaomo gave Qin Lingjun and Bai Xian a robe. Qin Lingjun nodded, took the robe and thanked him, thinking that this little Imo brother is more on the road. From this moment on, by Zuanyi's gourd painting dipper, this little Imo was the candidate for cutting chicken heads and burning yellow paper. As a result, the two found Qin Pingon cast their sights, and they immediately clasped their fists to the little Imo who hit it off, and later became worthy of brothers. Millet stared at the young Taoist priest and blinked. She waited for the introduction of the good man. Qin Pingon smiled and introduced, Xianwei, the Immortal's Immortal, the captain's lieutenant. I will cultivate Dao in our mountains in the future, so it's a guest. I wanted to say that Xianwei is not a real Taoist priest. It's just that Qin Pingon instantly realized that this sentence was inappropriate. He is not a real Taoist, who is? Qin Lingjun laughed and said, Xianwei Daoist, what a coincidence, I know a lot of Taoist friends. Daozu. Observers. Brother Jia in Qilong Lane and that Zhang Shanfeng from Lidafeng. With his own master by his side, speaking is hard-hearted. The visitor is a guest no matter what your background is. Xianwei was a little restrained, squeezing out a slightly blunt smiling face. I always feel that these two children look at the old-fashioned Hengqiu, but they are a little bit unclear in their minds. Like, Xiaomili is a conscientious ear-reporting god. He started to talk to Qin Pingon about some recent anecdotes about the Longzhou boundary. For example, on the Lushan side, I heard that there are more masters who like to watch deer in Songyin. His words are mysterious. What blue lantern hugs the bun on the Yang Palace, and the white hair comes back to Jinyuan people. And what is so poor that there is no month to watch this year, staying in this mountain and not thinking about returning? Qin Pingon smiled and didn't take it seriously. Because he roughly knows the other party's bottom line. In fact, Qin Pingon knows all the cultivators in the mountains to the west. It seemed that when the Luopa mountain became famous, a lot of celestial masters of the world suddenly popped out of the nearby hills. Millet also said that nowadays, but it's amazing, it has become a carry handle near Qilong Lane. White geese and roosters fight together. This is not the New Year shop now has a pile of feather shuttlecocks and goose feather dusters out of thin air. Qin Pingon did not go directly to Luopa Mountain, but sacrificed a talisman, intending to visit the sword platform first. Lao Jianxia Yue, whose name was called Upside Down, is now the name dedicated to Luopa Mountain. Lao Jianxiu picked two sword fairy embryos, He Xiangting and Yu Qingzhang. And these two children, they also deliberately left the Luopa Mountain to follow the practice outside Ziyue. In fact, Yi was still very surprised by this because Lao Jianxiu really couldn't understand why they didn't recognize the master if they let the hermit master. Even if they recognized a master, it would be better than finding such a master, right? It's just that the pie is falling from the sky and I can't push the door out. Yue is somewhat emboldened. At any rate, he is a jade realm. I really want to accept disciples. I really don't want to ruin the good aptitudes of the two sword fairies. Yu will preach carefully and teach all swordsmanship. Today, in a hut on the worship pedestal, Lao Jianxiu smiled at the two children sitting at the table and said, as soon as we three become masters and apprentices, we still have to look at Chen's success or failure in the end. Shan's his meaning requires him to nod. Secondly, even if Shanju Chen's side is definitely okay, before we leave Luopa Mountain we have to say hello before leaving. This is a courtesy. I believe that regardless of the sword spirit of the Great Wall and the Hauran world, how are the local customs and customs different? But this point is the same after all. Xiangting Qingzhang, what do you think? When I arrived at Puha, I was able to find the place completely. Miyu leaned against the door with his arms around his chest, watching coldly. Among the 9 sword fairy embryos brought back by Master Hermit from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the 2 with the best sword training aptitude, roots and temperament are the unsmiling little girl Sun Chunwang, and he and Pei Qian just arrived at Luopa Mountain. Bai Xian, who asked the box twice. Then there is Yu Qingzhang. As for the other children, if you don't talk about the rank of flying swords, just talk about the talent and character of sword practice, they are actually the same. Yao Xiaoyan may be the worst one. She is too soft-tempered, but she can't match the little girl's natal Feijian, 3 of them. However, in Mi's view, Yao Xiaoyan's baby girl is indeed lucky and it is not so good. The reason is very simple. If it is in the Great Wall of Jianqi, Yao Xiaoyan will definitely need to go out of the city to fight in another 10 years, at most 20 years. You can be sure that a sword repairer like Yao Xiaoyan will die if she goes to the battlefield. Either she will die or the protector will die because of her involvement. With Yao Xiaoyan's temperament, even if she left the battlefield alive once, at most twice, her Jianqing would have a big problem. But when he arrived in the vast world, Yao Xiaoyan could follow the steps and practice safely, become the middle 5 realm, and then rank among the earth immortals, and wait until the Yuan-Ing realm before going down the mountain. Miyu is actually quite resentful at the moment. Originally, Cui Dongshan had arranged for these children, but he did not expect an old sword fairy Luxiazu in the Yupu realm to fall from the sky. For example, Yu Qingzhang and Cui Dongshan once planned to reap him as one of the heirs. He Xiangting, who likes to read, would hand it over to the teacher to be a disciple. Although Planting Autumn is not a sword repairer who said that only a sword fairy can preach. Just because this is located in Laojiangxian, it is very likely that Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting will be taken away, and Cui Dongshan's long-term layout will be disrupted. If it wasn't for the sake of Yiyu's own consecration, no matter who he met in the Luapa mountain, he would be kind and gentle, and would not hit the smiley person with his hand. Otherwise Miyu would definitely have to learn from this old sword immortal. Among them, Sui Choice on the right was more unexpected, and he took the initiative to pick Chung Chaolu, a little fat man who likes to cook. Be the first to become a pair of masters and apprentices, and only waited for the mountain master to return to his hometown, and added a note to the genealogy of the patriarch Hall. Chung Chaolu sent a message at that time, and I don't know why Sui right side wanted to accept it as a direct heir. As a result, the future master said the heart of the child with only one sentence. I'm young and I'm fierce enough to punch. I can practice swords and martial arts in the future. Chung Chaolu immediately felt that she had to recognize this master. It's boring to praise him anyway. How do you think you are? Will you have no points? But praise him for his talent in martial arts. Can he be unhappy? Therefore, Chung Chaolu has now left the Baijiantai, following Sui right to take the wind and kite ferry to Tongyi's Hao. After that, he took control of his long life and fell in love with Nalan Yubiao, a small financial fan, and the two sides were equally fond of each other. Cui Dongshan deliberately asked Miyu to accept Higu as a direct disciple, but Mi Dajiangxian and this little kid both looked down on each other. However, compared to Cui Wei and Yu Xiehui, the future mentors and apprentices of Cui Dongshan who were appointed by Cui Dongshan, it is still a bit better. In fact, Cui Wei, as a Yuanying realm sword repairman, is not low in swordsmanship. Isn't Sui right side also Yuanying? Moreover, Cui Wei's swordsmanship is mixed, his killing power is not weak and he is also good at hiding. But Yu Xiehui just looked down on this hometown Jianxiu who fled before the battle, and asked me to apprentice with him to learn art? Can't afford to lose this person. When the group came to the worship platform, Qin Pingon put away the Fuzhou, clasped his fists towards Yu and apologized. Let Yu Jifeng wait a long time. Wait a long time? Yu was a bit at a loss. It seemed that he had worked hard for a few days, but old Jianxiu still smiled and clasped his fists and said, "Where this mountain is so good, I'm a little bit reluctant to leave." After Qin Pingon realized, he knew that he had made a mistake. In these days too many things have happened and I have this illusion. Miyu laughed and said, "If you don't want to leave you can stay. Who dares to rush to the old sword fairy to leave? See if I agree or not." Yu was a little embarrassed. Don't look at the prestige of Mi Dajiangxian in the local sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Not particularly high. But some foreign sword repairers actually suffered a lot from Miyu. Among them is Yiyu's old friend Pu He. Otherwise, Pu Lauer's stinky temper with his mouth full of dung, is willing to say something similar to Miyu on the wine table. Mi is not low in power? Although Yiyu didn't know the specific inside story, he just thought with his but, knowing that Pu Lauer must have been hacked by Miyu. Master Hidden Officer squinted Mi Dajiangxian. Miyu immediately smiled at Yu Hippie. "Yu Fu, the family doesn't say a few words, don't worry about it." Yu smiled casually. "It's not that Mi Jianxian is too worried if a family doesn't enter the house. Miyu can't help but slander. You are the sword fairy and your whole family is the sword fairy. It's not that Miyu likes to keep grudges and keep accounts, but it is Yu who calls the sword fairy every time he meets, and it is not a day or two to bear him. In my hometown there are not many who can be called the Sword Fairy, and the Sword Fairy like me who and Yuqing do not like to be called the Sword Fairy, so it is better to call them by name. As long as he can bear the beating and stand the beating. I saw Xianxia on the road and called Lao Chen, for example. I called Dong Sanging Dong Lao Pif or even Xiao Dong. It was all right. Yu Yu and Qin Pingon talked about their plans to receive Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting as a direct transmission. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, just about to say that since they are willing they have no objections. It's just that Ning Yao looked at the two children and asked, "Reason?" The two children's faces were pale, their lips trembled and they couldn't say a word in a daze. Mi Yu sighed. It's not good to meet someone, but Ning Yao happened to be met. It was time for the two children to be guilty and timid. Qin Pingon hesitated, but still did not disturb the conversation between Ning Yao and his fellow Jianxiu. Except for the little fat man Qing Chaolu who had gone to Tongyi's house, the other 8 children were all present. As Bai Xian expected, the 2 girls Nailin Yubi and Yao Xiaoyan were almost crazy. Especially that King Sun Chun saw Ning Yao, the little girl who had no expression or even eyesight, flushed for the first time. She clenched fists with both hands. She wanted to say something but didn't dare to speak. These children seeing Ning Yao are like returning to their hometown. No matter how Qin Pingon is regarded as a fellow countryman or the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jianqi, he is different from Ning Yao after all. So even if it is the same thing and the same truth, what Ning Yao said is a different truth from Qin Pingon. Qin Pingon coughed and walked away with Yu Yu. Xianwei sighed and was very sad. Good fellow, is there such a big mountain on Shanzhuchen? Is there such a group of little children under the command of Master Chao? 8 out of 10 he was on the thief ship by mistake. Ning Yao always didn't like to make rounds and corners, and soon after talking with those children one said one. It was the first time that Qin Pingon saw those children with different temperaments. They were so obedient and obedient. The end result is that the old Jianxiu Yue will soon leave the Luopa mountain with the 2 children who have the status of master and apprentice, and travel across the continent. King Sun Chun became an anonymous disciple of Ning Yao, but he needed to stay in Haoran world to practice, and would not go to Feishing City with Ning Yao. The uncle Bai Xian finally became honest today. He said that he would not go to Xingting to set up a stall in the near future. He had to stay at the sword worship platform and practice well. Qin Pingon then took her to the Patriarch Hall of Jiasfeng to honor the fragrance. Both Xiao Mo and Xianwei have not been formally included in the genealogy, so forget it today. Xianwei will not serve as an enshrinement like Xiao Mo, but an anonymous guest of Luopa Mountain. After all, no matter how courage Qin Pingon was, he would not dare to serve as Xianwei's preacher. If you really dare to act like this, you might be easily struck by lightning. The unintentional actions of ordinary people and the deliberate actions of cultivators are worlds apart. The key to Zhuxiang is on the side of Shaowanshu. A group of people waited outside the door and Qin Lingjun had already gone to inform the news. Zhu Lian and Shaowanshu came to Jisifeng together. After the pink skirt girl stopped, she smiled brightly and gave a blessing to the group. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. I bought some Yunzhen stone with Kai Jinjian on the green juniper peak of Yunxia mountain before. When I turn back I will refine the root dragon veins placed on Kaiyunfeng and Xianchao mountain. Then ask the little worm tree which mountain top I want to choose. A place for monasticism, help her choose a location to open a mansion. What if the little Nwanshu is not in the Golden Core realm? Turn back to the Patriarch's Hall to discuss the matter, and see who dares to object. After hanging the 3 statues with Zhuxiang to worship the fragrance, Qin Pingon and Ning Yao walked out of the door, and Shaowanshu skillfully locked the door. Immortal Wei was relieved, but fortunately Qin Shanzhu had another mountain top. This legendary Patriarch Hall on the mountain looked very magnificent. Qin Pingon and Zhu Lian, the great butler of the Downfall Mountain, walked side by side and talked about things. In fact, when Cui Dongshan took the initiative to ask to be the first suzerain of the next sect, then all the candidates for the lower sect of Luopa Mountain would be completely finalized. The Master Seed will temporarily be a clerk on the next side, in charge of the money bags, and in charge of the treasury revenue and expenditure. To be honest, as the national teacher of Nanyuan, Zhongxia was hailed by the world as the sage of literature and the master of Wu in the past, and he can't be too much in any position on the mountain. Jian Xiu Cui Wei temporarily serving as the next master. As for the chief worship of the next sect, it will be worshipped by the second seat of Luopa Mountain, and Mi Dajiangxian will be held. The position is fair. Sui right, there will be no title status, even if it is given she would not appreciate it. On the Grey Mountain side, the old Zhuang dynasty who had the pseudonym Xiaopoxian, was a survivor of the country, and the Prince Zhu Ying who had the surname of Dugu, was accompanied by a maid, Menglong. There is also Chunshui whose pseudonym is Shiqiu. She and her younger sister, Qiushi, were both sisters of the Dajiao Mountain in Luzhou, Beiju. The three of them have also been taken by Cui Dongshan to Tongyi's Hao. In addition, Liu Beixiang's two direct disciples seem to be the next disciples in the future. Qin Pingon joked. Cui Dongshan, the lower sect master, would you follow our upper sect to use A to dig the foot of the wall? Zhu Lian smiled and said, I didn't think it was that the son of the prince said so, it seems to have this meaning. Qin Pingon picked up Chao Jun from the Great Wall of Jianqi for nothing. The Yuanying realm sword repaired and Chao Jun was very likely to break the realm. This Chao Jun is also a wonderful person anyway. He didn't become the chief worshipper, so he took the initiative to ask for the title of the last worshipper of the fallen mountain sect. Zhu Lian said, Pei Qian is now at Xinxiang Temple in Fudi, so I didn't call her over. Qin Pingon nodded. After going to the account room, Qin Pingon told Wei Wenlong that he needed to embezzle 100 grains of rain from the treasury. To be loaned to Lin Shui. Forget it, it's a delivery. Borrow a fart. If the money is not good enough, it is better to send it directly. There are not many people who can get money from Qin Pingon. Wei Wenlong smiled and said that now there are a lot of rain money lying in the account books, and the mountain owner does not have to worry about being stretched. Zhu Lian smiled and said, money can be borrowed and it must be borrowed. It's just that Lin Shui can be a famous guest in the next clan. Qin Pingon nodded and said, it's feasible. The spy on Luopa Mountain and Jingguo Shuiyu will be temporarily handed over to Zhu Lian and Qin Lingjun. Then there is Nujiatis Baozhai, which has been short of suitable candidates. Before, Qin Pingon went to the Qingfufeng to find Mr. Hong, and tried to dig the foot of the wall again and again, but it failed. Therefore, for the time being, I can only let the Master of the Law preside over the overall situation, and then hand it over to the Sisters of Zhuchai Island to help with specific matters. Now Luopishen has 2 ferry boats. The temporary steward of the Dragon Boat Flipping Inc. is Lu Chongrun, the owner of Zhuchai Island, who has leased the back of the scorpion fish. The 2 parties have exchanged courtesy and have been getting along well over the years. As for the wind kite of the transcontinental ferry, Qin Pingon intends to let the long life and the second in charge of the trivial affairs of dealing with people and things, such as the old Taoist Jiaosheng, and let me take the ferry there when he is free. Then the fairy Fenjuan's face is all there is. Qin Pingon suddenly remembered something. In the city of Entry on the night ship, he obtained an ancient bao named Yunmeng Chongsong from the bearded man named Zhang San, Bao Fuzhai, which was a genuine object at a fair price. The rank is uncertain. Qin Pingon always feels that this treasure is a bit hot. The patriarch of the 3 educations once visited the town together. Somehow, the old master of the Taoist temple gave out that extremely rare Taoist picture after drinking a cup of tea at the gate of the mountain. At that time, after being refined by Cui Dongshan, a vision was born. A mountain gave birth to purple qi. The top of the mountains had no 2 days, and there was a moon in the tens of thousands of trees, forming a world of its own, with the sun and the moon rising and falling. So that even Weibo Tangtangshanjin in the mountains and rivers under his jurisdiction could not freely enter and exit the Luopa mountain. The only flaw is that it is extremely expensive to open and support such a protection of the mountain, which consumes immortal money, so Luopa mountain cannot open the large array all the time, but compared to the preciousness of the Taoist picture, this small flaw can be ignored. Any sect in the Haoran world can be used as the treasure of Jinshan Mountain. Hearing what Cui Dongshan said in the letter sent to the capital, it was a great contribution made by the considerate hospitality of the millet grains. Qin Pingon doesn't think this is a joke. In addition, in the former site of the mountain temple on the top of the Luopa mountain, Cui Dongshan has set up a golden thunder pond formation around it, and inside it also enshrines a picture of the sword fairy from the inverted mountain Jingjian pavilion. In the future, the gate of the Patriarch Hall of the next sect will hang the couplet given by Wu Shuangjiang, and the rank is astonishing. If you count the 12 flying swords that Qin Pingon succeeded in the Yuban city of the Yunwen dynasty, paired with the picture of the Taiping Mountains that has been suffering from, a clever woman can hardly cook without rice, it is simply a seamless attack effect. So in the future the two landscape formations of Luopa Mountain and Xiazong will be both offensive and defensive, and both can be described as the ultimate. As for this trip to the capital, I didn't go for nothing. According to Qin Pingan's previous estimation, the number of fragments of his own natal porcelain shed is as many as 6 and as few as 4. Now one of them was recovered from the Queen Mother of Li, and not surprisingly, it was hidden in the house next to the ancestral house in Qinpingan and Iping Lane. In addition, the Ma family in Xinghua Lane and Kaiyong Glinzong of Luzhou in Beiju are all likely to have hidden debris. Qinpingan would ask clearly, the kind that asked in person. Walking to the bamboo building, Qinpingan smiled at Xiaomi Li. I have to go to Xianyu County out of town right away. After I get home I will take you to Hangzhou town. Yang Hua, the of water on the Tiefu River, has gone to Dadu, the central part of China, to serve as a prince. It's just that now the position of Taya Fujiang's new water is still up in the air. According to the latest Jinyu genealogy issued by Dai, Taya Fujiang is from the 3rd rank, and the embroidered river water is from the 4th rank. Chongtan River Leaf Bamboo Green and Hiyuye River Godly Jean are only 5 products. As for the Longshu River, which has long since risen from Zixinga, Malanhua was also promoted from Hippo to River God. Although the rank is not high, it should have been built for temples and temples, but according to Cui Dongshan's statement, Mr. Yang gave it to the old woman in Xinghua Alley, promised to enjoy the incense after 30 years. In addition to being the place where the 3 rivers converge, Hangzhou town actually has 5 streams. Among them, Lanqi County, located in the upper reaches of the Yuye River, is known as the Waste of the 6 Rivers. Loquats are very famous. There is also a fairy cliff near the Lanqi River, and an underground river that secretly communicates with the Chongdan River. Qin Pingan must visit the Yuyejiang Temple and the Water God's mansion. The goddess of water, Li Qingzhu, must also meet. Millet reached out his hand to cover his mouth, laughed and said, "Small things, don't worry, don't worry." Putting his hand away, the millet grain pulled the rope of the messenger cotton bag. It was heavy and his shoulders were very sore. There are actually a lot of big and small things. Disciple Zhao Xuxia Zhao Wanwan. Zhang Jiazhen, brother Fu Lu Jiangchu. Later I would also give Pei Qian a hand-built duobayog. There is a letter in the backyard of the Yang family drugstore, waiting to be read by himself. When I returned from Qingyuan County, I had to be on the 2nd floor of the Zhulu to teach the boxing exercises for Pei Qian, a major disciple of the mountain. I searched for a city, located in a county in Huangting State, where I will be a teacher in the school in the future. Come to the bamboo building. Zhu Lian took Xiao Imo and Xian Wei to sit on the stone table beside the cliff. Ning Yao followed Qin Pingan into the house. Speaking of the residence of the mountain lord Qin Pingan on the 1st floor of the bamboo building, there is Wu Shuangjiang's tie at the time. The 2 seals of the copybook have been scattered, but there is still a flower of the rhyme. The heart is like the world. Green lotus color. There are also 2 copybooks that my husband personally asked for from Suzy and Lu Chi Huakai Tai Chi Drunk Tai, the same with the rhyme of Taoism. The literary luck is abundant. Before participating in the discussion of the Confucian temple, I ran into Lin Qing, a guest of the Qiu family in Yuzhou Luxiazu. Side section. West of the golden sky, not in the sun, the immortal is drunk, coming from the moon cave, flying sword like a rainbow, pinning Nanshan to open the veins and turning the palm of Beidu Yaoan gate. 4 words on the bottom of the seal. Zeng Jianqingshan. Putting this seal on the desk, Qin Pingan then gently placed the white jade Ganoderma with beautiful inscriptions on the bookshelf. Qin Pingan took a step back with his sleeves in both hands, stretched out his sleeves, and slightly shifted the placement of the white jade Ganoderma lucidum. It's like a swallow holding mud, like an ant moving house, just like more than a year. After my parents left, before the age of 14, they barely held the family business. But fortunately, every year has passed since then. After that, Qin Pingan took Ning Yao and called Xiaomo and Xian Wei to go down the mountain together. He was going to the Chaotu and New Year's Eve shops in Qilong Alley to check the accounts. Xiaomi Li did not follow, she had to patrol the mountain. The little girl sprinted happily while singing that stinky tofu is delicious, and the golden melon seed thief replied. Xian Wei just accumulated a little confidence in that mountain, and when he saw these 2 market shops he felt helpless again. Is this the source of money for your mountain? Isn't that about the same as yourself or earning some hard cash every day? That's fine, it really doesn't work, so I can only rely on my own and go back to my old career. When I came here I saw a few streets in the town that were quite expensive. I looked back to see if I could find some money there. The big disciple of Pei Qian, who was originally named Zhou Xian, was nicknamed Amon, and was nicknamed Little Mute Ba. Standing on the small bench behind the counter, today the child actually called to Master Chen Pingan for the first time. Chen Pingan inevitably murmured a little bit and asked with a smile, "Ah, are you planning to borrow money from me?" Asha shook his head and said with a stern look, "I just thought that the ancestors can see everything and take good care of some guys who are guarding and stealing." A white-haired boy ran over from the backyard and said angrily, "Ah, when do I eat cakes and don't pay for it now? I have to show evidence for planting mischief." Asha laughed and said, "What I eat in front of me is after the checkout. What about the ones you stole? I'm counting them all." The white-haired boy's eyes rolled around. "Actually, it is the cake that Tui Peanut stolen from next door. I can't stop it, I can't beat her." Chin Pingon rubbed his eyebrows. The white-haired boy stared at the young man in the yellow hat and blue shoes, with his hands on his hips and raised his chin. "You what realm?" said. "I always feel that this guy is more dangerous." The Huai Tianma, now named Huang Ho, is actually in Sui Chu Gong's real name, Natural. I don't know if it's because of my brain cramps or something, but I also have the thought of accepting apprentices, clamoring to be a master, and after a few days I can learn from the hermit ancestor to be a master. I often stay alone in the backyard, jumping and looking to the side of Luapa Mountain, raising my arms and shouting, yelling into the mountains and into the mountains to grab the apprentices. One is not too small, two are not too much, one serves tea and the other delivers water. In addition, either change the way to cheat some money from Tui Peanut or at the door of the shop holding a toothpick grinning to himself. At such a young age he has gray hair. Some of the neighbors in the neighborhood who are getting older in the streets have kindly persuaded the treasurer in private to take this poor baby to see the doctor. There is some money which is too frugal. Xiaomo was actually quite surprised. In the shop there would be an ascendant transcendent demon in the shop. As for the female ghost wearing a man's mortal relic, it is nothing strange. Xiaomo replied with a smile, "Anything in the realm is vain." There was a girl who hurriedly rushed from the Chaotu shop to Chin Pingon and respectfully gave a blessing and said timidly, "The slave servant Tui Peanut, I have seen the master of the mountain." Chin Pingon smiled and nodded, but he was extremely awkward. It was Tianwan from Xingyang Mountain, Zhou Xi's younger sister, who was intercepted by Tui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen, but was then stripped out by Tui Dongshan, twisted into a wick and then put into a flower. Now Tui Peanut, a girl who is doing miscellaneous work in Qilong Lane. She is now Tui Dongshan's sister in name. And Tui Dongshan also obtained from Tianwan a mysterious world of caves with a very high rank but no name. Although it is not among the 72 small caves according to Tianwan, the treasures of the heavens, materials and earth inside are powerful and powerful. Fortune, it can support the chi refining practice of an ascended realm monk. The implication is that an earth immortal, as long as the path of cultivation is smooth, he can always stay in this isolated cave and sky, and he can enter the ascension realm without asking for the slightest foreign objects. Among them is the Xianxia Immortal Mansion, which is mysterious, and there is no cave in the sky. There is also a stream named Danshi with gloomy water and jade-like flowing water, which is most suitable for alchemy. In addition, there is a red pine mountain, Poria Ganoderma lucidum ginseng, etc. There are a lot of spiritual trees and fairy plants. It's like a natural treasury at your fingertips. Since this cave sky was brought back by Tui Dongshan, the lower sect master, it must be placed in the lower sect of Tongyi's Hao because of emotion and reason. After all, Shangzong's Luapa Mountain already has a blessed land with a top grade and has reached the bottleneck of the Lotus Flower Blessed Land, plus the Sulongjing, which is the connection between the cave and the blessed land, not to mention the one that Julian Sai came from. Seat Fox Country. It's just that the piece of fat that Tui Dongshan really cares about is the extremely famous cicada. It's a pity that Tianwan didn't lie not on her. Of course, not being on her does not mean that she is not clear about the whereabouts of this cave. Presumably with Tui Dongshan's temperament he would definitely not stop there. Because this ancient cave is considered to be one of the most important sites in the ancient Shu realm, it is rumored that there were many ancient sword celestial beings here. Qin Pingon asked Xiaomo and Xianwei to stay at the shop and return to the mountain together later. He took Ning Yao along the steps of Qilong Lane, climbed up the steps and walked to the top of the steps. Qin Pingon turned his head and looked at him. After that he walked all the way to Nipping Lane, passing Xinghua Lane during the period. Zhou Xian's stall was placed here. A drunk and blind old Taoist returned to Qilong Alley. This was not a happy event for the neighbors in the neighborhood. The wine was drunk and the red envelopes were confiscated. The distant relatives are not as good as the neighbors. Bone. When the old Jia heard that Zhou Xian and Mrs. Zhou had just left Qilong Alley, the old Taoist stomped his feet, beat his chest and felt sorry. After all, he is an old in the Dragon Gate realm. Although Jia Xing is blind, he runs a little energy and his vision is actually as normal as ordinary people. I heard that Xiaoma is a new worship on the mountain, and that one can see through it as a fake Taoist priest. Xianwei, who would be Kuqing, immediately took the two to drink at his own shop, and the white-haired boy followed to eat and drink. As soon as I drank a drink, I never stopped eating a plate of wine and food. I drank Xianwei with a lot of nose and tears and his face was flushed. He held the bowl with one hand and the other hand held hands with the old Taoist on the table. Shake vigorously, everything is silent, all in the drink. This old immortal Jia who has also been in the world and knows the most bitterness is really a confidant. Even if anyone drove himself away he couldn't leave. As for Qin Lingjun, I just taught brother Xiaoma to draw boxing, and the two of them were gesturing blindly there. Qin Pingon led Ningyao to Anai Ping Alley. Once a second Xiazong is established, Luopashen will be upgraded to the authentic in the world, and the Xiazong will be promoted to Shangzong. There are only a handful of authentic immortals in the world. Like Howren, there are only 2 in the world. When he reached the alley that he couldn't be more familiar with, Qin Pingon stopped at the door of the ancestral house, glanced at the courtyard gate of Songjisan next door, and was not in a hurry to retrieve the shards of natal porcelain. Turning his gaze again, Qin Pingon glanced at the house next to him, as if he had been unoccupied since he remembered. Ningyao also glanced at the house of the master and servant next door, remembering that he seemed to have seen a short winter melon girl with a pose. Qin Pingon opened the courtyard door and the door of the house. The courtyard and the house were all clean with spring couplets and blessings posted on the doors. Qin Pingon entered the room and lay down on the table with his chin resting on his arm. Ningyao asked, "What's the matter?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "If you marry a wife like this, what can your husband ask for?" Ningyao held his cheek. "I haven't been here for a long time." Qin Pingon sat for a moment then stood up. Ningyao knew where to go. Walking out of the alley together, after crossing the stone arch bridge on the Longshu River, Qin Pingon and Ningyao walked together on the rural road. To the grave. Qin Pingon handed Ningyao 3 sticks of incense, holding 3 sticks of incense in his own hands and offering them together. Then Qin Pingon knelt down and began to add soil to the grave. Ningyao squatted aside, took out a small bag and asked softly, "I brought it from Wuxia Xianxia, is it appropriate?" Qin Pingon turned his head and smiled. "It's appropriate, how inappropriate." Ningyao breathed a sigh of relief. He took the bag, poured out the soil inside, patted it a few minutes and tamped the head of the grave slightly. Qin Pingon's eyes were red and his voice was hoarse. He just called father and mother twice as if he couldn't say it anymore. He could only move his lips slightly and mutter in a low voice. It seems that when he was 14 years old, the straw shoe boy officially went abroad for the first time. Started to travel far away from home. But Qin Pingon didn't talk to anyone, even Ningyao and Lu Xianyang. In fact, it was the road under the feet when he came. With the help of neighbors in the neighborhood, a yellow-faced and thin straw-shoe child walked in front of the coffin. That road from Ni Ping Alley to here is the farthest trip of Qin Pingon in his life. It may be because today's visit to the grave with more of her by her side, she will definitely marry the beloved woman who came into the house, Ningyao. Qin Pingon took out another jug of wine and sprinkled it on the grave, then gently placed the jug in the mud near his feet. The man squatted on the ground, covering his face with one hand, his shoulders trembling and a soft whimper leaked from his fingers. It seems that until this moment Xiao Pingyan of the year and Qin Pingyan of today have really gotten married. I really dared to tell them that I had a very good life on the side of my parents' grave. Sort of coming Chapter 889. Qin Pingon and Ningyao walked back to the town, where Huaihuang County was not the only place where the superintendent of building and construction department. The two passed by an old-fashioned restaurant. It occupies a small area but has 3 floors. It was once the tallest building in the town. The 3rd floor is not open to the public. Qin Pingon was upset and said to drink inside. He also smiled and said to Ning Yao that in the early years, only the rich in Fulu Street and Taoya Alley would come here to drink. Otherwise it was the master Long Yao who collected apprentices here. Do wine. While chatting at the fire temple in the capital, Qin Pingon learned that this restaurant is actually the property of Aunt Feng. The third floor is her resting place. Besides, Aunt Feng also saved a lot of land deeds. She also leaked the secret, saying that most of the kiln openings of the dragon kilns that have now been converted into private kilns are under the names of old coachmen. The old coachman usually lives in Erlang Lane. As for the Luwei of the Zhongtu Yinyang family, there are many houses in Fulu Street and Taoya Lane. Qin Pingon chose a table by the window and only needed a pot of wine. The jug and bowl are all celadone made locally. Ning Yao just drank a bowl but did not stop Qin Pingon from drinking. In this restaurant there was a rare customer in the early years. Even the nominal hotel shopkeeper didn't take it seriously. But the real owner of the restaurant, Aunt Feng, once sighed faintly. A gentleman with frosty white temples once asked for a pot of wine and a few dishes with wine here, and he could drink and drink for himself. Looking from the window on the second floor of the restaurant, you just happen to be able to see a plaque on the archway on the street. After drinking and eating food, Qin Pingan's face was reddened but his eyes were bright. He stood at the window and looked at the archway building for a moment. After regaining his gaze, he went down to the restaurant with Ning Yao and returned to Luopa Mountain. The westernmost house belonged to Li Huai's family. A few years ago there was a wedding reception here. It was Li Lu who married a scholar from a foreign country. It was said that he was the son of an official and eunuch, and the woman raised her eyebrows fiercely. Don't scold people anymore. At that time women liked to hang out the most. Everyone smiles at each other when they meet. Many of them are neighbor enemies who have quarreled or even scratched their faces. Only now the family returned to Beiju Luzhou. Ning Yao was a little curious that Li Lu would marry. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It seems to be the fate of the past life. Cut off the red dust and then practice peace of mind, enter the ascendant realm, there is no big problem." Ning Yao blinked. Qin Pingon said helplessly, "I don't know either." Ning Yao tilted his head. Qin Pingon said, I don't know what you are thinking. In fact, there is a secret hidden here which made Dong Shuijing and Lin Shi not give up completely, or that they did not put sack on that bastard. It's just this kind of thing, and Qin Pingon is really inappropriate to say it. The truth is probably on Li Liu's side. It's a name but nothing. As for the scholar's side, God knows. Today a table on the Luopa Mountain is full of people. The main seat of the opposite door sitting Qin Pingon and Ning Yao. Zhu Lian Wei Wenlong and Zhang Jiazhen in charge of the accountant. Mu Xiaomao Xianwei. At the last seat with his back to the door, sitting Qin Lingjun Millet Grains and Qin Wanshu. Before the old cook was busy at the stove, Wanshu and Xia Miliang both helped choose dishes and blue bamboo tubes, while Xiaomo was in charge of serving dishes to the table. Seeing Xianwei shook his head, this little Amo really doesn't think of himself as an outsider, and he's not an outsider. Soon he will worship old Xianxian Jia and Qin Lingjun as brothers, and only wait for old brother Jia to choose one. On auspicious days, the three of them will cut chicken heads and burn yellow paper in Qilong Alley. At the wine table before, Qin Lingjun patted him with pain in his shoulder. No matter what, they are all good brothers. Besides, Qin Lingjun has already slapped his chest and promised that you will wait for you, brother Xianwei, to share the blessings and keep the spicy food. In the future, whenever there are only 3 or 2 dishes on the wine table in the future, even if I, Qin Ling, don't talk about the morals of the world. I have treated my brother badly. As a result, brother Jia slapped the table and suddenly cursed to let your mother ass. Frightened Xianwei most of the time, but it was Qin Lingjun standing on the bench with his hands on his hips, laughing. It turned out to be a false alarm by Xianwei because the old fairy Jia soon came with a few quick words saying, "Brother Qin, you look down on our grass-to-head shop, or do you look down on my cooking skills? No matter how high the wine is, it can't be bragging, it's not comparable to Mr. Zhu on the mountain. It's a must, but in Jiaxing's level of wine and food, how many chefs in a small restaurant can compare? What? Especially the extremely long, character of old Xianxian Jia, which made Xianwei's heart warm. This is the rivers and lakes and wine bureaus that I am thinking of. As for today, it's a bit less interesting, but Mr. Zhu's dishes are really delicious. No matter who is not restrained, there is no red tape of toasting each other. You can drink, eat, and there is no such nonsense of not talking and eating." Zhu Lian took a sip of wine and asked with a smile, Brother Xiaomao Daoist Immortal, can you still put down chopsticks? Xianwei lowered his chopsticks like flying, bowed his head and said, to be able to use chopsticks you must be able to. Xiaomo didn't say anything but he held the cup in both hands, raised his head, drank it and then the glass was facing down. Qin Pingyan and Zhu Lian asked in their hearts, why didn't Xinyuanji come? Is she afraid that there will be too many people and no place? Jiang Chu was practicing in retreat, but Qin Pingan didn't let Zhu Lian call someone. Zhu Lian explained with a smile. No, she only has 2 meals every day, morning and evening, and it is medicated diet. If you don't step on it this hour you won't come. Girl, if you are not afraid of the day you must be afraid of being fat. Words. And I said hello to her. She said that she would have to invite Shanju and Mrs. Shanju to dinner alone, thank you. Qin Pingan couldn't help but laugh after hearing the words. That's because I was exposed. Thinking of something, Qin Pingan continued to ask in his heart. Now, how old are the parents of Xinyunji and the 2 elders are in good health? Last time I went back to my hometown, I heard Xiao Mili said that Xinyuanji's mother was infected with wind and cold. Zhu Lian said, Dong Shan pretended to be a doctor in secret before and was seen by a helper. He was unharmed. Qin Pingan nodded and said, you still have to pay more attention. Zhu Lian nodded. After a meal, Qin Pingan asked Wanshu and Xiao Mili to lead the way together to visit Pei Qian's house. Qin Pingan glanced at the cotton shoulder bag of the right guardian and asked with a smile, where is the big bag of golden melon seeds? Is it too heavy so I didn't take it out? The little girl patted her beloved satchel and explained in a low voice to the owner of the good man. In this accompaniment capital, only a part of the soldiers and horses are stationed in it for the time being, and I will fight in the north and south with me. With the accompanying capital, of course, there is also a capital city. Of course, it is the Celadone piggy bank that she, Pei Qian and Wanshu have. It was given to them by the old cook in the early years. As for the nicknames of the capital and the capital, of course, they are the nicknames that Pei Qian helped to come up with. They are so domineering. This is the first time Qin Pingan has walked into Pei Qian's house. Of course, this is related to Qin Pingan's short stay in Luapa Mountain. For nearly 30 years he, the owner of the mountain, has not taken too much of his hand as the shopkeeper. When I arrived at Pei Qian's house, one house was the residence and the other house. It was the study room of this great disciple of the mountain. The study room is not locked. In fact, there are not a few books in it. Leaning against a shelf on the wall, there are a variety of treasures accumulated by Pei Qian's years of travel, placed high and low, and there is no high or low rank. But after listening to the whistleblower of millet grains, the most valuable items are kept in the next room. There are also a few boxes under the bed filled with ledgers and locked. Even Sister Wanshu doesn't have the key. Qin Pingan took out 3 multi-treasure racks, 1 large and 2 small, from within a few steps. From the materials to the tenon and tenon, it was all done by himself. The small multi-treasure racks can be stored and taken out completely. As for the big one, Qin Pingan should temporarily as a carpenter he squatted on the ground to assemble. After he was done, Qin Pingan patted his palms, turned his head and looked at the table and stool by the window. After putting it on for many years, it was still a small desk and a tall stool. Pei Qian practiced boxing at the Zhulu when he was a child, and when he returned to his residence every day he would copy books here. Qin Pingan could not imagine that a little black charcoal who was so afraid of hardship back then would suddenly think of practicing boxing. If she knows, she probably won't have to copy the book. She owes it first and will make up later. Qin Pingyan, with a complicated mood, still feels complicated after leaving Pei Qian's house. Not far from the door there is a small mo standing. Wanshu and Xiao Mili immediately left, each busy. Xiao Mo waved with the 2 little girls, and then asked the question he wanted to ask on the ferry. When will the sun visit Piyun Mountain? Qin Pingan was stunned and the light was dark. He was really too familiar with Wei Shanjun. Every time he returned to his hometown he never thought of this. Every time Wei Bo took the initiative to visit Luapa Mountain, and Wei Bo didn't think of himself. Be an outsider in the Luapa Mountain. The melon seeds of millet grains Wei Shanjun really knocked. However, it is still inconsistent with etiquette. It is indeed his negligence. Qin Pingan smiled and said, it's better to have a chance as soon as possible. Let's visit Wei Shanjun now. The 2 went to Piyun Mountain together with Yufeng. Wei Bo appeared on the top of the mountain a little surprised and said with a smile, rare. Qin Pingan is very sad. This is not really true. Xiao Emo bent over and said, I have seen Jun Wei Shan. I saw the mountain monarch in front of me with a slender figure, a handsome appearance, a snow-white robe and a golden ring in his earrings. Floating out of the dust, the style is outstanding. Wei Bo is a mountain monarch after all. He already knows that this young monk of unknown origin, named Shizhu, is a new offering from Luopishan, and has become a third-class offering from the penal department of Dali. Wei Biao smiled and held his fists in return. He said without taboo, I have seen fellow Dao Shizhu. Without a word, Xiao Emo directly drew out 2 meeting gifts from his sleeves. They were a pair of pocket-sized and lovely mountain treasures, a sapphire axe and a topaz. According to what Howren now says, they are all semi-fairy ranks. But for Xiao Emo they are just dispensable chicken ribs. Who is not sending? Is it possible to exchange it for money? Can still only be regarded as a polite and affectionate icing on the cake. After all, is a Xiaomo who even described his 2 natal flying swords as fancy and impractical. Wei Mo originally wanted to decline because of his relationship with Luopishan. He didn't need to be so dismissive. Moreover, Mr. Wei Dashan mistakenly thought it was at most 2 magic treasures to meet each other. It's just that Xiao Mo is extremely persistent, saying that Wei Shanjun and his son are inexorable acquaintances who have met at the end of the day. After so many years they have been taking care of the mountain. If you do not accept this thin gift, it will be too unfavorable. Then there will be a banquet in Piyun Mountain in the future because he is willing to invite him Xiao Mo to be a guest and will never come. Wei Mo was stunned. It is really a downhill mountain. Such a gentle person is rare. There are not many. To be precise, it seems that there are only 2 cute girls, Nuanshu and Millet. But if Xiao Mo knows the rank of the gift, will Wei Bo accept it? It's been safe. Qin Pingon couldn't stop even trying to stop it. How can you really be a mountain monarch rich? Those landscape mansions, especially the few fairy houses in Zhongyue Jinqing, write on the paper and they like innuendo. It is said that people on Aquarius Mountain are starting to bet on when will Piyun Mountain hold the next night banquet. Qin Pingon didn't even use his heartfelt words and said straightforwardly, Xiao Mo is a sword repairman. He is at the peak of the Ascension realm. In fact, he comes from the wild world. The place of cultivation is in the bright moon and bright moon. He slept for thousands of years. Ning Yao and I, as well as the Saint of Rights, returned to the world together. Wei Shanjun just raised that arm. He was going to take the gift from the Xiao Mo, but he froze over there. A peak sword repairman in the Ascension realm isn't equivalent to an old throne in the wild world. Qin Pingon took advantage of Wei Bo to be in a daze and asked in his heart, Xiao Mo, what kind of rank? Xiao Mo answered honestly, half-fairy soldier. Wei Bo was just about to bite the bullet and accept the gift. Qin Pingon immediately grabbed Wei Shanjun's arm with one hand and pressed Xiao Mo's wrist with the other, complaining, It's all my family. You're blind, Xiao Mo. Who are you? Wei Shanjun put it away. Wei Bo smiled and said, Xiao Mo, Qin Pingon is reasonable. They are all in the family. If you are polite with you, I will accept the gift. Just let me say a word of politeness and thank you. The next night banquet, how could it be possible that there is no brother Xiao Mo? And a special night banquet will be held for Xiao Mo. It's all right. Qin Shanju is not like this. Wei Shanjun still has no score in his heart. The more Qin Pingon is like this, the more Wei Bo knows that he does not accept gifts and must regret his intestines. Shameless? If Lao Tzu wants to show his face, can he host so many night banquets? The street with bad reputation has arrived at Beiju Luzhou. How did Lu Jinglong's wine table invincible come out? How did the first night banquet in Piyun Mountain come from? Qin Pingon looked towards Wei Shanjun. Will there be too many 2 pieces? How about 1 piece? Wei Bo looked towards Qin Shanju. Oh. Qin Shanju still has a firm vision. I finally bought the bamboo from Mrs. Qingshan for real money? I gave it to Piyun Mountain for nothing? Wei Shanjun responded with a sneer. 1 yard is 1 yard. I and Daoist Shizhu just see each other. If you have a face to stop it, I have a face to accept it. 2 neighbors, silence is better than sound at this time. Qin Pingon felt that he was inferior to others, so he had to put his hands away, put his hands in his sleeves and smiled. Xiao Mo, we can wait for the invitation to the night party. After all, the opportunity is rare and it is not often encountered good thing. Wei Bo put the green jade axe and topaz axe in his sleeve, smiled and said, Drink or drink tea, listen to you. Qin Pingon smiled and asked, If you drink the mountain water and luck, you won't be successful? Wei Imo waved his sleeves. Whatever you want. Xiao Imo feels that his son and Wei Shanjun are indeed deeply emotional, and it seems that the gift has not been given in vain. What is it in Piyun Mountain? Colorful clouds and green trees, pavilions and lofts on the ridge. What's going on in the mountains today? Meet friends. Songhua brews wine, spring water Xianxia. The Songhua wine brewed by Wei Shanjun himself is a must. It's just that the reputation is not as big as Changchun Gongjunyo. Speaking of which, at the boundary of Beiyue, who would dare to drink Songhua wine from Piyun Mountain easily? Only after attending a night banquet can I have a chance to drink a pot. The most expensive Xinjiao wine in the world, in addition to the Qingshan Mountain in Zhuhai Dongtian, is the Piyun Mountain in Aquarius. The spring water is a unique jasper spring in Piyun Mountain, one of the famous springs in Aquarius. In fact, the comment on the spring water comes from the handwriting of Dong Shuijing, a Maoist creditor. Because the 3 springs on the list were all rounded up by him. Tea is the new tea sent by the little worm tree before and after the rain this year. Several old wild tea plants from Kaiyunfeng are picked by the worm tree and then hand-fried by the old cook. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Let me turn my back to the master once and I'll make tea." After took a seat, she shook the sleeves of her blue shirt and used fire and water methods. Cooking tea is a pleasure to watch. Weibo squinted his eyes and smiled. The strawshoe teenager in the past is so celestial. Returned to Luopa Mountain from Piyun Mountain. Ningyao lived in the house on the side of Xiao Nuanshu tonight. Xiao Mili often rubbed the bed with Sister Nuanshu, so he followed. Anyway, there are so many quilts over there. Qin Pingon sat on the first floor of the bamboo building and read a book. In the middle of the night he went to the ancestral house in Nipping Lane, lit a lamp and sat all night without feeling lonely. In the early morning of the next day after returning to Luopa Mountain, Qin Pingon and Ningyao went to worship the sword platform again. Yu Yu, the sword repairman of Luxiazu, is the guest of the Xia family of Miyun Ai's house. Lao Jianxia was embarrassed to see the mountain master, so he immediately set off on the road. Otherwise, the 2 apprentices would be abducted by him. Lao Jianxia ran away early, and if he didn't know how to run away so that someone could not see or bother him, Yu would have to worry about being asked by the sword fairy Midajian. When Yu Yu saw Qin Pingon, he knew what Lord Hermit meant and he became more relieved. Qin Pingon joked, "Don't think I'm driving people away." "How dare you?" Yu Yu smiled and said, "My Lord Hidden Officer, let me you not be angry. I have called him Mi Jianxian deliberately these days on the mountain. Although I am useless on the Great Wall of Jianqi, I still know the customs there. Yes, I saw my old friend Pu He, who was also a boastful talk at the wine table. Ah, do you dare to call me you like that?" "I dare, and I still call me Jianxian every time I meet." To say that Yu Yu is not flustered at all, it is self-deception. Fortunately, every time Mayu's eyes are not good, it is not true. Yu Yu restrained his smile and continued, "Thank you again, Lord Hidden Officer. Help me give me a word to Mi Jianxian. Yu Yu respects me you in his heart and is true." Qin Pingon nodded and promised and asked with a smile, "Why don't you go to Miyu and say it in person? Yu Yu is a straightforward person." He laughed and said, "Before I owed my mouth, Mi Jianxian shouted too much and I yelled at him Miyu. Besides, I am also worried that this kind of sincerity will not be taken seriously by Miyu. From the hidden official, Miyu, I'm sure I'm willing to believe that I don't lose money, but I still earn money." Qin Pingon nodded and turned to look at the 2 children who were afraid to look at Ningyao. Qin Pingon took out 2 prepared small bags from his sleeves, handed them to Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting and explained with a smile, 300 snowflake coins, I have converted them into 3 small summer coins. This is Master Luopa Shan. According to Tang's rule, the direct disciples will have this money when they travel far away. You haven't formally followed Yu Jianxian to learn art, and I haven't crossed out the name on the Ji-Sifeng ancestor spectrum, so this rule cannot be broken. Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting each took the light money bags, but it made them feel a little heavy. He Xiangting, a child who likes to read, said courageously, "His secret officer, we are not sensible anymore." Yu Qingzhang held back for a long time and said dully, "Sir Hidden Officer, I'm sorry." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Don't think about it this way. It's not a matter of great right or wrong. When you practice on the mountain, you must pay attention to your own conditions. There are some things that I have to do when I am in that position. You are in your own situation. Now that we are going to be separated, I'll just tell you something in my heart. If you don't think that way and don't alienate me, I, the hidden officer, will feel that something is wrong and I will underestimate you. All the children in the world probably grew up along with the truth. Qin Pingon took out another stack of books. At the top, there was a copy of Swordsmanship Strict, which was copied by Qin Pingon. There are also several sage books and literates notes bought from Dolly Capital Bookstore. Together with He Xiangting, who likes to read, Qin Pingon said, "You'd better read this swordsmanship carefully. As for the rest of the books, it doesn't matter if you don't read it." He Xiangting took the book and solemnly thanked the hidden officer of the Great Wall of Jianqi and Mr. Qin of the Fallen Mountain. Yu Qingzhong wanted to speak but stopped, scratching his head. Qin Pingon joked, "I'm sorry now, it's still too late." The two children grinned. This was probably the first time they showed a smile on the side of a young hidden official, and they were sincere. Worshipping a good master, it is even more important to practice well. Even in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, not every young sword repairer can get a senior in the Jade Pu realm as that master and be preached carefully. Qin Pingon stretched out his hand and gently pressed the heads of the two children. Cultivation is for a better life, but life is not only about cultivation. This truth can be temporarily ignored. Two children focus on their heads. Qin Pingon retracted his hand and said in his heart, "Yuzha, say a few more words, you must be more strict in the future. You can't just focus on their practice and breaking through. It's not that you have to be more reprimanded, but you must pay attention to all aspects. It's a matter of practice, no matter how big it is. It's no better than being a human being. It is said that the rich family loves their children. The first thing must be sufficient wealth. Elders love. It is human nature. But if it is spoiled, it is easy to develop arrogance. Young and arrogant, how can you become a virtuous?" Especially Yu Qingzhong and He Xiangting were born in poverty. They suddenly changed their growth environment and their lives suddenly became rich, so we should pay more attention to this matter. Those of us who are masters, preachers, preach by example and teach by example are more precious than giving one or two books. Cheats are more important. In comparison, the person who does not need to find money on his own is the sword repairer. Some ordinary trivial matters, when you are an elder, you must not do it for you. Some essential family teaching etiquette must be taught repeatedly. Since you are already a sword repairman, you must cherish this blessing and let the children develop the habit of ignoring the lives of others. Although Yu Qingzhong and He Xiangting are good friends, they have very different personalities. Let Yu Qingzhong follow you for thousands of miles. Read more books, broaden your eyes and broaden your mind. Read more about the trivial things around you. You can't study hard, you are constrained by reason into a rigid temperament, and you must apply what you have learned. It's me who made a fuss. Qin Pingon laughed at himself, apologized a little and said nothing more. After all, Yu is now the nominal master of the two children. Is actually not suitable. Fortunately, Yu is not a small-minded senior. Otherwise, based on these words, it is estimated that he will be a bit grudge. Yu sincerely sighed. "My lord hermit, where is this shit swordsmanship and Taoism?" Thinking about the Mandarin duck meeting for the first time, this young hidden official, how confident and energetic. But at the time of parting today, the young hidden official's heartfelt words made Yu realize that the young sword fairy in front of him was actually a close disciple of Wenxing's lineage, a little master who had read sages and sages. "I have only one thing, not to say any kind words to worship." Qin Pingon continued, "You must not let the two children be outside. It is clear that they are in control, but who is being bullied? There is no human affection and care about the overall situation. After all, sword repair is sword repair and sword repair must be sword repair. I will never allow the children who have left their hometowns from the Great Wall of Jianqi. Their dispositions, behaviors, one by one become. The world is so vast, not at all like the sword repairs of the Great Wall of Jianqi. If one day I find that it has become like this for worship, I'm sorry then. I will teach it." Old Jianxiu said in a deep voice. "Luxiaza Jianxiu, you will never let Mr. Qin so disappointed." Different from Qin Pingan's careful thought. Ning Yao is still her consistent style. Taking advantage of Qin Pingan and Yu's heartfelt words, she has some words to teach the two children from hometown, and she is still too lazy to say words. Yu Qingzhong, your aptitude for sword training is only acceptable. You have to know what the material is and you have to be diligent in practicing. Don't forget your roots when you reach the Howren world. Don't come to that set of things that compares the advantages and disadvantages. Remember to read more books, use your brains when encountering things and learn more about your hidden officials. He Xiangting, don't be pulled too far by Yu Qingzhong. Within the time of Jiazi, at most 1.5 levels of difference are allowed. You can't fall in this breath. Take a step back and say that sword practice can be slow and you can't be a man. Regular and clear. Clear swordsmanship means clear swordsmanship. Ning Yao looked indifferent and said, "You too, please remember each word for me clearly." Yu Qingzhong and He Xiangting unanimously trembled. Remember. Some secrets and inside stories of the colorful world, that big white goose has already said. A brand new world in history, the first Jade Realm, Fairy Realm and Ascension Realm. The sword slashes the high gods. Walking far away with the sword alone, asking about the sword, severely injured Daoist's closed disciple. Now the number one person in the colorful world. For the 9 sword fairy embryos, it is not strange there is only one mind. Ning Yao really is Ning Yao. No one can find a sword repairer, even if it's just like Ning Yao in the world. Yu listened. The old man was actually not much better than the 2 children. After listening to the old Jianxiu, there is only one emotion at the moment. Sir Hidden Officer is amazing. Ning Yao held a fist and said, "I have worked hard for the old man." Yu hurriedly bowed his hands back. "Don't dare to be." Qin Pingon came out of the Fuzhou and sent the 3 masters and apprentices to Nujiadu. There is no direct ferry to Ia's Hao in Aquarius Island, and we need to wait for an intercontinental ferry to Luzhou in Beiju. At the ferry has not yet entered the boundary of Longzhou. I chatted with Lao Jianxiu for about 2/4 of an hour. Qin Pingon asked about the customs of Luxiazu and Ia's Hao. Yu naturally knew everything he could say. It's funny, it's a pity that Lao Jianxiu doesn't become a storyteller. After the 3 of you boarded the ferry, Qin Pingon and Ning Yao stood near the railing and waved goodbye. Xiao Emo found Zhou Xian, the housekeeper, and said that he wanted to build a book building. The worship of Luopa Mountain and Kiqing near the bamboo tower in Qianshan will have their own houses. In fact, there is not much left. Enshrining Xiaomo and Xianwei Kiqing, who went up the mountain together, there are just 2 idle houses, otherwise they really can only move to the back mountain. With the style of Luopa Mountain, it will never be, because Xiaomo is an ascendant realm, and the Immortal Way has a great background. This kind of thing makes an exception for them. And the Immortal family mansion on the backside of the mountain is endless. There are more than 30 large and small, all of which were invested by Chief Zhou in his early years. In the future they will be used to let new disciples settle down or entertain guests, but they are now downcast. The number of disciples of the mountain's genealogy is still small, and the mountain owner has spoken again, making the current Luopa Mountain look like a mountain for 20 years. So except for a house where 2 people live, the rest are temporarily empty. When Xiao Emo found Zhu Lian, the old cook was weaving baskets in the yard. He heard that Xiao Emo had to pay for the building of the bookstore. He smiled and said that it was okay. The craftsmen on the mountain, on the Huiming Mountain, were all ready-made hands and craftsmanship. It's not bad for a bookstore. The only problem is that there is really no land near the bamboo building, so Xiaomo now has 3 choices: build it near Jisa Peak or build it on the back mountain. Otherwise he would simply choose a vassal mountain as his own path of cultivation. The ground may be more refreshing. Xiao Emo said that it shouldn't be so troublesome. If the mountain rules are not violated, he can tear down his house and build a book building on the original site. He can use the book building as a monastic mansion, and the book building only needs to be 2 stories high. Julian thought for a while and said that if brother Xiao Emo can trust him, he can build the book building. But it takes some working hours and there is no need to send money to outsiders. Xiao Emo was surprised and quickly got up and thanked him. Because his son mentioned Luopashan, he highly respected Mr. Zhu's erudition and versatility. He gave him a high evaluation, without the craftsmanship that Julian can't, even if not at the moment. At most 3 or 2 years will be given to Julian, and he will be a well-deserved master in this business, and he will not be able to be convinced. The reason why I can travel far away with peace of mind is Julian, the great steward, who has done a great job. Julian smiled and asked, Xiao Emo, does the bookstore have a name? Xiao Emo said, 2 Lost Buildings. Good name. Julian hummed, it's up to the level of our son's name. Xiao Emo smiled and said, it's the name that the son helped to choose. Zhu lied, turned his head and said to Xiao Emo sternly, the naming is usually not easy for the young man. After so many years there are only a few times. It is clear that the young man's blue eyes for Xiao Emo add up. Xiao Emo smiled and raised his eyes. Julian smiled and said, envy and envy. The book building like me has no name yet. I once asked the sun for calligraphy but it won't work. Xiao Imo inevitably has some doubts. Given the affection between Mr. Zhu and his son, why is it so? It's just said in the book. When you are in a happy state, don't talk about the happy things with the frustrated people. After all, Xiao Imo has just gone up the mountain. He doesn't know some inside stories and temporarily doesn't know the mystery of the book building. If Qin Ping helped to name it, there would be a ghost. So Xiao Imo just changed the subject and asked, if I stay here, will I delay Mr. Zhu's business? Zhou Xian smiled and said, in terms of work, it's hard to talk about business and bad things. Xiaomo, you stay the best. I can still have a companion to talk to, like drinking alcohol with a beloved one. Xiao Imo took out a book of graceful words from his sleeve and sat aside to read the book. During the busy period, Zhou Xian glanced at the content on the top of the CI collection, smiled and shook his head and said, when 100 flowers bloom, you most think of you, and you hate you when 100 flowers die? This statement is so bad that it falls into the stereotype. When 100 flowers bloom, the most resentful monarch, and the most reminiscences when 100 flowers are gone. Regardless of thoughts and grievances, they are always in the 100 flowers. Can be said to have a deep affection, a long-term grievance, dare not to hate, can only complain, and the woman is full of grief and pain. Xiao Imo was speechless, and then he was convinced, turned around and clasped his fist, saying, Mr. Zhu's witty remarks, like a graceful lady coming from the picture scroll, without flowers fragrant. Zhou Xian laughed and said, Brother Xiao Imo is not bad. Xiao Imo decided a little bit. He and Luopishan seem to fit the Taoist heart naturally, and there is no need to deliberately go to the countryside to follow the customs. Xiaoma comes to Luopa Mountain and there is Xiaoma in Luopa Mountain. It is a lucky thing. Zhou Xian skillfully weaves bamboo baskets and said casually, the kindness of the strong is a gentle spring breeze. Xiao Imo closed the book and just about to talk ran in a young Taoist priest who had just gone to the gate of the mountain, blushing and shouting, Xiao Imo, it's incredible. Turns out that this is Luopa Mountain. The ferry boat is drifting away like a bird in the sky. The 9 children Qin Pingon brought back from the Great Wall of Sword Qi have their own belongings. They no longer just stay on the side of the sword stand and practice swordsmanship, they all have a real future. Qing Chaolu, the little cook, became Sui right-hand biography. Xiaokai Fan Nalan Jade Card and Zhang LV live a long-term apprenticeship. Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting have already followed the old Jianshu Yue to cross the continent, first to the Miunxia clan of Iashao, and then they will take their 2 children to travel along Luxiazu to catch the autumn breeze. For use words, it is that the Miunxia family had to laugh and bloom, soaking in his own light. It was equal to the 2 sword fairy embryos of the Great Wall of Sword Qi without the slightest incense, and the fairy money and the treasures of heaven and earth were less. Yigu finally recognized Miyu as his master. Is actually a matter of Ningyao. What face do you look down on Miyu? His Miyu was in the Golden Core and Yuan Ying's Earth Immortal realms, summing up his demon-killing exploits, ranking first, even more than half of the Jade Pure Realm sword repairs. At that time, Miyu was standing not far away with Qin Pingon. Although Ningyao told the truth, Miyu was still panicked. If the child Higu was reluctant at first, but could recognize Miyu as a master by pinching his nose, then Yu Xiehui would be unwilling to follow Cui Wei, this traitor, to learn the sword. Even at that time, Cui Wei wanted to take the child on the Fengyuan ferry boat to Tongyi's Hao. Yu slanted back and did not want to leave the worship platform. He was anxious. At that time he said a few very heavy words to Cui Wei. Cui Wei is still Nalan. Nocturnal disciples, the master is dead, so many people are dead, so many Jindan Jianxiu who can leave are dead. You are the only one who hides in a foreign land, can't make a single sword and live the best, don't you lose heart? Replaced by me. If I don't die in my hometown, I will die on a battlefield like Old Dragon City. Let me recognize you as a master? Don't even think about killing me. I feel embarrassed to be your master. Cui Wei, the nascent soul realm sword repairman, didn't say anything at the time, but left the worship platform silently without saying a word. Ningyao's reason is very simple. She did not say whether Cui Wei's choice was right or wrong, nor did she say whether Yu Zaihui's persistence was good or bad, but asked Yu Xie to go back to prove it by herself. You learn Cui Wei's swordsmanship first, and then you don't have to worry about the master and apprenticeship on the mountain. The 2 sides will ask the sword a game and decide the winner. Let Cui Wei admit his mistake in that matter by his own ability. Sun Chunwang better discuss. Ningyao let the little girl at most Jiazi into the Yupu realm, can become his own named disciple. As for Bai Xian, he received a pause. Be serious about practice. Your qualifications are only considered good in the Howren world. You will die in your hometown. Is Mi Yu before Yupu realm, but he has the face to say that he doesn't need to practice sword? When you are Zhong Yuan or Qin Shi. Only the soft-tempered Yao Xiaoyan, Ning Yao didn't say anything serious, just made the little girl bolder. Before, at the sword platform there, the 8 children faced Ning Yao one by one, stunned and at a loss. This may be the strength of Ning Yao. She doesn't need to care too much and she doesn't even bother to sow people's hearts. But the kid from the Great Wall of Jianqi faces Ning Yao. In fact, it was like the later great sword immortals such as Yu Qing, Mi Hu and Li Tumi in the early years when they were children they faced the elder sword immortal. It is rare to speak, curse a few words. It is some rescue, which shows that the qualifications of swordsmanship are still improvised. In fact, Ning Yao didn't even think about saying so much at first. Just as soon as they arrived at the Baijiantai, they heard that the 2 children were leaving Luopa Mountain, and they seemed to be angry with Chen Pingon, so Ning Yao was so angry. As a result, out of the 9 children, only 2 sword fairy embryos are left, and the ancestors are not yet clear. Bai Xian and Yao Xiaoyan. So Qin Pingon intends to ask Xiao Mo if he likes Bai Xian and is willing to accept him as an anonymous disciple for the time being. Let the white-haired boy who changed his name to Huang Ho be willing to teach Yao Xiaoyan some superior swordsmanship. It's just that everything can be done. Taoist companions or masters and apprentices will not be allowed. Standing on the side of the ferry, Ning Yao hesitated to speak, but she rarely hesitated. Qin Pingon stretched out his sleeves, held Ning Yao's hands and chuckled softly. When I arrive at Feishing City, help me greet my colleagues in the Summer Palace, especially Guizhujio who is calling your wife. Just say her master and sister miss her very much. Ning Yao nodded. Today's Qin Pingyun is in a miserable situation, which makes her feel a little uneasy. No matter how high Xiaomo's swordsmanship is and no matter how loyal he is, he will fall in love with Qin Pingyun. But after all, it's better to stay by his side. Qin Pingon raised a hand and gently rubbed Ning Yao's brows, apologizing. You are far from the great sword immortal. Don't worry. Ning Yao still just nodded and didn't speak. Flying City took root in Wuxia Tian. I, a hermit, were not present and I didn't congratulate him. It's too shameful. Qin Pingyun put away his hand, twisted his wrist, and there was an extra whisk from Xiandan City whose name was Whisk. Ning Yao shook his head. You are not an outsider, congratulations. Qin Pingon has his own reasons. It's not the same. This is what I grabbed from the fairy hairpin city. It's very different from ordinary objects. It's the most suitable to put it in Feishing City. Who will let fairy hairpin city dare to follow the sword? The Great Wall is higher than the Qi. Ning Yao said, I am waiting for you in Feishing Cheng. Qin Pingon nodded and said, okay. The woman in front of her is still very different from when she was a girl, but it is the best anyway. Qin Pingon took a deep breath. I will send you off. The 2 of them turned into blue and white long rainbows, their sword aura rushed into the sky, and they instantly moved away from the ferry. The sage of the Confucian temple sitting on the Ao Ping Zhou Tianmu opened the door to the colorful world. Really want to enter the colorful world? Ning Yao still has a long way to go, but the road is stable like an official post road in the world. After the gate was closed, the old master stood on the white cloud and smiled and said, since you don't want to give up, why not stay? Qin Pingon smiled and said nothing, but bid farewell to the sage of the Confucian temple. Return to Luopa Mountain. Qin Pingon has hung the Night Yu sword on the wall of the first floor of the bamboo building, adjoining the couplet. Glanced at the sheath-long sword on the wall. The world is not smooth and the dragons and snakes are flying on the wall. There are 2 imprints on the desk which are well-deserved initials. Is the Yinpu of the 100 Swords immortal and the Yinpu of the Jianxian. Fatty Yen wanted to buy it back then but he didn't give it. The price can be discussed, don't think about it. So Yanzhou almost wanted to take advantage of Qin Pingan's staying in the Summer Palace to become the hermit official, and ran to Ningfu to become a gentleman of Liangshang. Qin Pingon walked out of the bamboo building. The small pond behind where a purple nasturtium was once planted has been moved to the lotus flower-blessed land. Looking at the empty waterless pond, I remembered a Buddhist saying for no reason. Like a lotus flower that does not touch the water, it is like the sun and the moon do not stay in the air. A person who cultivates the Tao lives in the mountains. The so-called true Taoism is probably a pair of eyes like the sun and the moon, and a Taoist heart like a green lotus. Leave the small pond and go to the stone table beside the cliff. Between the bamboo building and the stone table beside the cliff, there are cyan stone bricks. You can walk in 6 steps here. Was laid with student Cui Dongshan before, but Qin Pingon didn't know what text Cui Dongshan had engraved on the bottom of the blue brick. Before, I heard from the old cook that Wei Xian had accepted a diary as a major disciple, a little girl who was only 9 years old and a lonely child, but she was already 5 years old as a cultivator. Is a disciple picked up by Wei Xian from the small elementary school under the vassal. An orphan who started practicing at the age of 4? The first time the master and apprentice met, Wei Xian was drinking at a wine shop beside a post road. He only needed a bowl, otherwise the drinking would make a mistake. Then Wei Xian saw a girl in rags. She was thin and yellow, but her eyes were different from ordinary people. When she walked, she breathed and walked calmly. The girl took out a few coins from her pocket. Shumen Shulu bought 2 bowls of inferior wine with the shopkeeper of the wine shop, and then did not choose to sit at the empty wine table. The girl just squatted on the side of the road drinking, holding a bowl and drinking a bowl. After drinking the 2 bowls, stack them and return them to the shopkeeper. From buying wine to returning the bowl, the little girl was speechless from beginning to end, counting the time and foot strength in the twilight before the night ban silently returned to the county. Wei Xian saw that the shopkeeper didn't seem to be surprised at all. He should have known it, so he inquired about it and found out that this girl who had learned to drink at a young age turned out to be a frequent visitor to the wine shop. He heard the shopkeeper say that the little girl homeless. It seems that he was a refugee who had separated from his parents in his early years. The Dali dynasty, which served as the suzerain country a few years ago, allowed each vassal to restore the country with merit. In fact, the common people did not matter. The result was really bad. It is said that he was the crown prince, and the rejuvenation became the emperor. Several brothers must fight with him sitting on that dragon chair. The army was in turmoil. Who can imagine now a little further away, some neighboring countries that are said to have few young and strong men left after the war are all stable. I never thought that they hadn't suffered much here earlier, but just fought a battle on the border. Although many frontier soldiers have died, they have kept a peaceful world within the border, and the world has turned into chaos instead. Orphaned. How did you survive these years? Who cares? The new graves are vast, but in fact they are considered good. For example, the ones that were taken in by the Yizhuang still have a sleeping place. As for those lonely and wild ghosts, no matter how they died when they are ghosts, they still can't eat for their children and grandchildren. Starving ghosts. But the little girl doesn't look thin. She has a lot of strength, and she would work some part-time jobs in the county at first, and finally settled down in a shop selling incense and paper money. As soon as she was free, she would wander around inside and outside the county seat, presumably looking for her parents, walk as far as the post station and wait until it gets dark and then go back to the shop inside the county seat. It's just that the shopkeeper thinks that her business is too bad, so she is only allowed to buy wine, and she is not allowed to sit at the wine table. The little girl didn't say anything. Every time it was so well regulated. Wei Xian fell in love after listening. Going to the incense candle shop to accept apprentices went smoothly. Wei Xian didn't have any money, and only agreed to help her find the parents who had been lost for many years. It turned out that when she was 4 years old, the child's father and mother found a deserted and dilapidated tomb with an opening like the mouth of a well. Her father and mother felt that the family would definitely not be able to survive, and did not want the little girl to starve to death on the road. Reduced to beast food, the bones will be exposed in the wilderness, so he will be cruel, put her in the tomb with a basket and leave all the food left on her body. The little girl stayed alone in the tomb. After a few years, instead of dying in the tomb, she left the large tomb like a child, crawling back from the ghost gate to the sun. The reason why she did not starve to death is that she did not conceal anything from Wei Xian, who had recognized her master. She only said that when she was about to starve to death, she saw a large turtle in the tomb. When the moonlight leaked, she would crane its neck. She seemed to be breathing just slower. She followed and learned to be less hungry. Qin Pingon was stunned. Is both bitter and shocking. To talk about strange people and strange things, Qin Pingon is really not uncommon, so that seeing the so-called miracle on the mountain has long been a surprise. But such a thing really made Qin Pingon a little shocked. This disciple of Wei Xian must meet. There is no enlightenment from a master, no cheats of the fairy family, no treasures of heaven and earth, And the little girl is still illiterate, so she just took a few glances at the legendary tortoise breath technique and embarked on the path of cultivation. This is not a genius, what is it? According to Zhou Xian's statement, it is estimated that Luopishan can accept such a genius who has passed down his disciple generation. It is estimated that half of it is due to Wei Xian's fate of mentoring and apprenticeship, and half to Luopishan's benefits. Pausing for a moment by the cliff, Qin Pingon returned to the bamboo house residence, picked up the 2 prints and was ready to travel. Compared with the past, this trip is not far away, it is very close. I just went to a small country east of Beipingzu, a small martial arts hall in Xianyu County, Qingyuan County, just to find friends to drink. A young Daoist who can still be young, a hero who is no longer a big man and no longer travels far away. The old man is old. Qin Pingon hangs double knives on his waist, stacking them on one side. Is the 2 narrow knives, execution and investigation. Qin Pingon did not go directly to Yufeng but called Xiaomo, and the 2 went to the gate of the mountain on foot. It is rare for Tsin to practice boxing today. Millet grains are watching the door over there, sitting on the bamboo chair. As if secretly holding something in the palm of his hand, he put his palms together and spread out all of a sudden. Self-care and cheerfulness. Xiao Mo, with a yellow hat and blue shoes, now has a bamboo box and a hiking stick in his hand. Qin Pingon was worried that Meili would think too much and promised again, "It won't take long for Xiao Mo and I to go home this time." Xiao Meili nodded vigorously with a small face with a sentence written, "What a good person Mountain Lord said must count." Qin Pingon touched the head of the millet grains, counting and counting. Xiao Meili was relieved and said to Xiao Mo, "Mr. Xiao Mo very scholarly." Xiao Mo squatted down, knelt down on one knee, just looking at the millet grain and smiled. "Right, Guardian, is there anything you want me to carry with you? My son's mountain top is full of weather." For Xiao Mo, it's actually okay, no need to be surprised. I just didn't expect to see young girls like Xiao Meili and Xiao Nuanshu. One is the right guardian of Luopa Mountain, the so-called guardian worship in the world. One is in charge of all the keys of Ji Sifeng Patriarch Hall. Xiao Meili quickly waved his hand. "What the hell, Mr. Xiao Mo must not spend any more money for me." The mere response to the gift has already made Xiaomi's brains not enough, so I had to ask Muanshu's sister Jing Qing and the old cook. Xiao Mo looked gentle. "I am not short of money." Xiao Meili shook his head and said, "That's also money. It's not easy for anyone to make money." Alas, she is not proud when she is older and taller. Yao thinks that back then, on the side of Dumb Lake in her hometown, she never regarded money as money, and the good person Mountain Lord can help testify. Since then, Qin Pingon has been practicing the sword light escape technique. Once he loses his energy, he will turn into a more familiar and relaxed Yunshui body, but the speed of the wind will slow down a lot. Once exhausted, he will sacrifice the talisman. Boat or let Xiaomo hold his shoulders and drag him for a long journey. The former is for spending money to see the scenery, while the latter is purely on the road, driving fast. Xiaowuguan in Xianyu County, Qingyuan County. There is a hero Su who will lose every boxing. Helped 2 friends who had met in the rivers and lakes in their early years. They both left a room and kept it clean personally year after year. Also said that when it comes to drinking, there are only 2 people each time. It's not good. You have to make a pile of 3 and he has to pick 2. Su Xianxia's disciple, Guchuanxi, suffered a love injury and became a drunkard who soaked in a wine jar all day long and sleepwalking. He just fell in love with Zhou Fei before and left his hometown for a trip. Now he has become a disciple of the second seat of the Zenzhenzong to worship Li Fui. From a martial arts disciple who was eating and waiting to die, he began to climb the mountain. Every 6 months, Guchuanxi would send a letter back to tell his master that he was safe. The child of Bai Xian who came here with Qin Pingon last time, Bian Pai Lai Lian, asked the martial arts gym for the title of guest. Su Yuanxia didn't take it seriously and she treated it as a kid's joke and agreed. There are also darts who earn money and make a living at the martial arts hall. The concierge of the martial arts hall is still the young man whom the chicken and duck talked about last time, and is Guchuanxi's disciple. I saw Qin Pingon and recognized that it was the friend of the patron of the museum. The young man did not block the way like last time. He only said that the owner is now walking darts, and there are still about 2 days before he can return to Xianyu County. Qin Pingon asked the young man about the route of darts, looked for a quiet place in the street and alley, used the water and cloud body, and went to the convoy of the martial arts hall. Hidden body. Yufeng traveled far away over an ordinary ferry. Qin Pingon looked down and stopped. In late autumn most of the weather is declining, but near the ferry on the ground the year is good, orange, yellow, orange and green. Xiao Emo glanced around, saw the truth and asked curiously, according to the mountain, it is the strange mountain and water who clings to the nobleman, wading through the mountains and wading so as to avoid the calamity of cultivation? Qin Pingon nodded, it's almost the same. A number of ghosts and spirits who are successful in cultivation, in order to avoid the will of the sword and soldiers in certain mountains, they will look for blessed people as refuges. Otherwise, inside the big and small cities, there is the Wenwu Temple and the City God Temple. Outside there are still landscape gods just like the grass bandits in the mountains. How dare you sway the market? However, these are the knowledge that the calamity has come, the catastrophe is imminent, and as a last resort you must find an amulet. Some are doing business and earning the way because every time you pass a mountain and water realm guarded by gods, ghosts and mountain spirits, you can add an invisible Dao Qi to yourself as if you are carrying an ethereal body. Clearing the customs, an extra seal was stamped out of thin air. It's just this, and it's by no means an easy task. In some places the gods of mountains and rivers are not good at things, so they missed it. But once they were spotted by certain mountain gods, daffodils, temples and daffodils, it was tantamount to provocation. Often the end will not be any better. Qin Pingon stopped and looked down at the ferry, just to determine whether that ghost is seeking life or profit. If it's the latter, it's really doomed. Because of the ghosts on the ferry crossing, it's still not clear at this time. The Qinghuang Temple on the other side of the county city has already noticed its traces, and will soon come to the ferry to ask the teacher. Meeting is the master of the city who came here in person, accompanied by a day travel who had just returned to the county city to report the matter, and a general in shackles. And by the ferry, a Hebo was already waiting on the shore. At the ferry at noon the sun was shining and a woman walked under an umbrella, stepping on a pair of embroidered shoes, and closely following a scholar who entered Beijing for an exam, intentionally or unconsciously, just hiding in the shadow of a scholar. The scholar must have a reputation for jury, because he has the running script issued by the Ministry of Ritual of that country, so he bears a trace of cultural fate that is far away from the capital. Xiao Emo said, the sun, the ghost girl with the umbrella, is worried about whether she will implicate the scholar, and also wondering how to make up for the scholar's loss of yang energy if he escapes by chance, and is thinking about finding a chance to shelter him. The descendants of the city for 100 years. Qin Pingon smiled knowingly with Xiao Emo by his side, which can indeed save a lot of things. Little Emo, I have to blame you. I am used to traveling together. What should I do in the future? It is difficult to change from extravagance to frugality. Xiao Emo said, as long as the sun is not annoying and doesn't rush people, Xiao Emo can accompany him to travel far and wide. Qin Pingon suddenly felt a little hairy in his heart, and glanced at Xiao Emo. Damn, is it possible that Xianwei was in the alley at the time and didn't misread Xiaomo? How hard is it to guard yourself against coming and going? How meticulous so that this kind of thing can be dark under the light? Xiao Emo smiled and said, don't worry son, Xiao Emo has female cultivators who are similar to later generations of Daoist couples, but their appearance and cultivation aptitude are not as good as the wife in case. Qin Pingon smiled awkwardly, what do I want? How could I misunderstand Xiao Emo? Xiao Emo thoughtfully said, it's Xiao Emo who misunderstood. Xiao Emo, you go and stop the Lord Qinghuang, you can show the identity of Dali, show them the innocence card and hand it over to me at the ferry. Qin Pingon quietly fell down, walked to the umbrella ghost, put his fingers together, gently pressed against the oil paper umbrella, and laughed in his heart. Is this a girl who makes a tricky journey on the road? Ghosts trample on the shadows of the young people at will, hurting people's vitality and invisible, so you are not afraid of doing more calamity out of thin air but taking the blame? The female ghost had a very white face. She turned her head to look at the swordsman in the blue shirt. She was terrified and trembling begged for mercy. Masters, slaves and maids have hardships. Please be kind to the masters. Just let the slaves and maids be kind. After crossing this river, you will immediately leave the immortal master's great kindness. The servants and maids will be unforgettable. Between words she took out a purse from her sleeve. 16 immortal money is the new Jingna's savings. I only ask the ferry master to let the slave and maid leave only one, so that it can be given to the person in front of you. Public. The oil paper umbrella she was holding was already held by the fingers of the blue-shirt swordsman. She had to stand still, but the scholar in front didn't realize it. He just walked forward slowly, waiting for her embroidered shoes to leave. The shadow of the scholar, the ground was hot like a pan, leaving her nowhere to stand in the sun. Her face faded and she was holding back the pain, so she had to lift one foot and step on the other embroidered shoe. The female ghost holding an umbrella was in the line of life and death, subconsciously raised her eyes, and looked at the back of the scholar in front of her. She looked a little trance, reluctant to give up, and smiled with relief. Then she would sip the fairy master, always spit on his face before she was reconciled, and then reduced to the other side's merit for killing demons and slayers. But the green shirt guest smiled, put his fingers together and tapped the oil paper umbrella lightly. In an instant the golden silk thread poured down the umbrella surface like rain, as if it were open. A circle of curtains. She's like falling into a cool place in the fairy family. Qin Pingon handed over a stack of Huangshi talismans and said, "After crossing the river, I repaid the scholar. If you like, you can go to a place called Shijianhu and find a monk named Zenji. Maybe you can visit Cultivation over there. This mountain is not difficult to find, you will know when you get there. If you don't want to travel far, just feel free." On the front line of life and death, the female ghost holding the umbrella has no killing intent and tyrannical aura. A bit of spiritual light has not been covered by the natural hostility of Yinling. This is the pure Dao Xian. Otherwise, with the help of Xiao Mo to examine the content of her heartstrings, this female ghost has divided right and wrong, good and evil, and Qin Pingon has no need to be so aggressive. The female ghost holding an umbrella is suspicious. For no reason in a peaceful meeting, why should the other party be so benevolent? I just thought about it a second time at this point of my own incomprehensibility. Why did he make the immortal master with unfathomable one-handedness in front of him so calculated and framed? Thinking about it again, she was a little worried. Could it be that the other party coveted her beauty? Qin Pingon could bear any misunderstanding and could not stand the injustice alone. He laughed angrily. "Quickly follow the scholar to cross the river and think less about what you don't have." The female ghost really didn't dare to think about anything. She tremblingly put away the stack of Immortal family talisman, gave a blessing, thanked her and quickly stepped forward. After a few steps, she discovered that she hadn't walked in the shadow of the scholar. The same walking is no problem, she couldn't help but stop and turn her head to ask. Dare to ask the name of the fairy lord, the fairy mansion? The bookish swordsman in the blue shirt who looked at it a few more times shook his head. "Don't know if these are missing." She hesitated for a moment, her eyes firm. The slave servant sincerely asks the immortal master, or say a number. I saw the man patted the saber on the waist and smiled. "My name is Qin Pingyun. I am a swordsman." Is not only learning from someone but making a joke with the umbrella ghost girl. Was again for the county city god. Because Xiaomo's last-ranked card from the Dolly Department of Punishment didn't seem to be particularly useful. Turned around and held a fist on the side of the city who was driving in the mist, then used the Yun Shui body and continued on the road with Xiaomo. After the Cheng Huangyi, the Sun Yushan and the General Yoke, and the Qingshan guest who had signed up, he pressed the head of the cloud and came to the shore to let the uncle he who was supposed to be blocking the road just do it. The female ghost let go. That Hebo was also a savage person. Even if he saw the city's boss of a county, he still had to ask for a reason before he was willing to give way. The city was in a very good mood. Not only was he not annoyed, but he told Hebo. The sword fairy in Qingshan is exactly the young mountain lord of the Luopa mountain in Longzhou, Dolly Qin Pingon, the lord of the sect. Qinghuang teased the uncle he. The sky is so big that a sword fairy can stop here, and he has to separate some of his own merits and a female ghost to cross the river. He was very proud of his heart, but he said, "The realm of a sword immortal is greater than the sky, and it is not too great for the truth of the humble duty here." Qinghuang smiled. "So this is the reason why you are here as Hebo and I sit in Qinghuang Temple in Junqing." Hebo suddenly asked, "Is that Qin Jianxian from the Fallen Mountain?" Poor look down on Jinghua Shuiwei, can't afford the Xianshui mansion news, and the news from the mountains is far inferior to the city god. It's just that colleagues and Shangguans often mentioned in the liquor bureaus that two young sword immortals in their 40s came out of the Dolly dynasty. They asked the sword together and demolished the patriarch hall in Jingyang Mountain. Especially it was Qin who had a bad temper, and used a sword to chop off the head of the old ancestor who moved the mountain. Looking back at the behavior style of the green shirt swordsman, it doesn't seem to resemble external rumors. Could it be that the Lord Qinghuang had missed it? Qinghuang nodded. You can't do anything fake, it's true. He uncle complained. Oh, Lord Qinghuang, in that case why didn't you tell me earlier? I can ask Qin Jianxian for a calligraphy. Qinghuang Lord stared. Did you not say it earlier? He both stopped talking. Whoever is the official is reasonable. Xiao Imo followed his son on a Yufeng tour, continued on his way and asked, my son used to travel like this. Qin Pingon smiled and said, nosy? Xiao Imo smiled and said nothing. Qin Pingon said, when the realm is high, the world is small. It seems that there are trivial things at the foot of the mountain. It's not wrong to say that, but you and me stop for a little time. The difference is that you accompany me to take a ride on the talisman to watch the mountains and rivers. It's a little bit different from me being dragged by your shoulders. But for others, it may be life and death, the road and the knelt on the ground and begging for mercy. Whether it's on this day each side or the lover finally gets married. Xiao Imo said, the son is preaching the method Xiao Imo has been taught. Qin Pingan endured and endured. Xiao Imo said, I heard Mr. Zhu say that the origin of the atmosphere of Luopa Mountain is attributed to the sun's original source and setting an example. Qin Pingon twitched at the corner of his mouth. Nonsense, I have no relationship with me. Xiao Imo sighed. The sun is really imaginary. The mountain roads are winding like snakes, rugged and difficult to navigate. A motorcade is all pony. An old man with white eyebrows and a saber riding a sword. It is estimated that he was away from home, so the old guard did not shave much, keeping pace with a young Daoist priest. At the turn of the mountain road, slowly walked out of a green shirt with double knives on his waist and smiled, robbery. Behind him stood a young man who looked like a scholar. The old man laughed and said, Mountain, at first glance, it is a person who does not rob money but only robs and can only wrong you. The young Taoist priest smiled and said, Brother Su, you are more handsome. You don't always talk about appearance. Together with Qin Pingonjia, are you not enough? The two rolled over and got off their horses facing the other person. Martial arts guard saw the green shirt swordsman, walked quickly, raised both hands, and held hands with Su Yuanxia and Zhang Shanfeng respectively. Most of them know this person whose surname is Qin. It is a friend of the old museum owner. I don't know what's going on. The man in the blue shirt actually walked on foot to lead the horse for the owner of the museum, talking and laughing. Went down the mountain and passed by an inn. For people sat at a table. The owner made an exception. Not only did he drink while walking the dart, he also allowed all martial arts disciples to drink a bowl. It's weird. Is the owner really afraid of going out halfway? Qin Pingon picked up the wine bowl, took a sip of the wine and took out a not thick book from his sleeve. He smiled and said, Look through it. Su Yuanxia wiped the corners of her mouth, took a closer look and quickly wiped her sleeves. Then she picked it up. It was a collection of Su Zis poems. The last time I mentioned it at the wine table, Qin Pingon started bragging about it, not drafting, saying that he could help himself to ask for a collection of poetry with the title of Su Zi, and he could even help his own landscape. Preface to Travel Notes. Su Yuanxia opened it cautiously and she found that she really had the title of Su Zi and a private seal. There is also a sentence, a career wrapped in a thick cloth, a gift to the bearded ranger Su Yuanxia, plus the year and month signature. Su Yuanxia flushed and in her arms she laughed and said, The stinky kid imitated the handwriting pretty much, I take it for real. Qin Pingon picked up the wine bowl and said, When I turn back to help you write the preface, Su Zi agreed. I'll help you send the manuscript to Su Zi as soon as you finish writing it. Su Yuanxia looked suspicious. Zhang Shanfeng began to arch the fire. What are you trying to do? Why don't you hurry up and toast to our Uncle Qin? Qin Pingon continued. I still have a copy of Su Zi's copybook, but I forgot to bring it with me this time I went out. If I want, I can go to Luopashan to get it. Su Yuanxia stretched out 3 fingers and shook her. You kid, that's okay, just said 3 things and she has blown 3 cowhides. In fact, these days Su Yuanxia would go to the Xianxia mountain near the martial arts hall to hang out from time to time and ask about things on the mountain. So the old people know about the ceremony in the Luopa mountain at Jingyang mountain and the discussions in the Middle-earth Confucian temple. Every time I climbed slowly, hurried down the mountain, returned home, drank alcohol and went to sleep drunk. Su Yuanxia raised the wine bowl, bumped heavily with Qin Pingon and smiled. If you're busy, you don't have to go back to Xianyu County with us. It's just a few drinks, business matters. Qin Pingon chuckled and said, don't pretend to be heroic with me here. I'm going to really go. You can't scold me to death on Zhang Zhenren's side. Zhang Shanfeng smiled and nodded. Now he is in the Sevuing realm and he is called a real person on the wine table, which is not excessive. Su Yuanxia just turned her head and looked at the yellow hat youth. She regretted it. Sure enough, this guy who was in charge of helping pouring the wine had already nodded herself, and only said one thing, I would go one by one and drank it in one go. Before this meal, Xiaomo always said nothing when he was toasted. A large bowl of wine must be finished in one sip. After a few times, Su Yuanxiao and Zhang Shanfeng would not dare to toast much, and then as long as there is a meeting of sights, will be regarded by Xiaomo as being persuaded to drink or bored with a mouthful. I'm afraid of such heroes on the wine table. The wine is very good and the result is better than the wine. What's more, Xiaomo is very well prepared. Every time he asks Daxia Su to say something, if Su Yuanxia drank it in one sip, Xiaomo would pour herself 2 more bowls, which caused Su Yuanxia to toast or drink. On Mo's side, I can only be really casual. In short, I'm very happy. So Su Yuanxia actually didn't drink much, she just raised her wine bowl a lot of times and she came and went anyway. It was like a savory drink. After that she returned all the way to Xianyu County, and learned that Qin Pingon was going to Tongyi's house to establish her next clan. Su Yuanxia couldn't help but let Qin Pingon get out. Qin Pingon didn't bother to pay attention to him. Sitting on horseback with sleeves in both hands, shaking shoulders and double knives folded at his waist, he just casually chatted with Zhang Shanfeng. The 2 parties had already agreed to go to Tongyi's house, and Zhang Shanfeng asked Su Yuanxiao if he is angry or angry. There is no way, some people are getting old, their legs and feet are not bright, and walking darts is no problem even if they bite their teeth. Young and strong men travel the rivers and lakes, drink that flower wine, see beautiful women. They are all willing to kill thieves but are powerless catch the thief. Myself was very angry with Su Yuanxia. This way back to Qingyuan County, Su Yuanxia had a relationship with officials, post stations, or Jianghu sects along the way, and occasionally experienced disciples. For some reason Xiaomo always felt that his son would be like 2 people on the Luopa mountain. He would be lazy, basking in the sun, drinking a little wine and occasionally whistling as if it was the tune of a folk song. When he arrived at the martial arts hall in Xianyu County, Xiaomo became more and more eye-opening, and he turned out to be his own master who cooked a table of dishes. Su Yuanxia, with arms around her chest, leaning against the door of the stove, smiled and watched 2 old friends and a new friend busy over there. Drinking today is just a drink. When he arrived at Zhang Shanfeng's house, Qin Pingon took the lead and opened a book with paintings. Zhang Shanfeng complained, Brother Su, I am a Daoist priest. What do you mean by putting these books on the table? Su Yuanxia chuckled. Yomo is a book with long legs. She sneaked in by herself. It has nothing to do with me. There was still a midnight snack in the evening. Su Yuanxia took the 3 of them out of the martial arts hall and found a small restaurant opened in the back alley. This meal Qin Pingon and Zhang Shanfeng opened up for a drink, like an infighting. At dawn the next day Qin Pingon rubbed his forehead, not knowing how he returned to the martial arts hall. After getting up he opened the door and walked out. After not walking a few steps he found Xiao Imo squatting on the steps next to the martial arts field, watching Su Yuanxia teaching his disciples and grandchildren practicing boxing and walking. Zhang Shanfeng, this stupid man, was holding a bowl of wine beside him, and he was resurrecting his soul through drinking and hangover. Su Yuanxia waved to Qin Pingon, come here and teach some fist moves. The disciples of the martial arts hall all looked at the master Qin, who was so mysterious by the owner. White hairpin and blue shirt, stepped on a pair of black cloth shoes with Melaleuca sole. They have to admit that the appearance is somewhat correct. As for boxing scripts, since they are friends of their own pavilion owner, they are good and bad. Why does the owner of the pavilion have such a good reputation in the arena, especially among peers? Isn't it the incense sent by the fist? If it were not for the kindness of the owner of the museum, enough oil and water for a meal, he would never be in arrears with wages. Otherwise he would really not be able to keep a few people. Just now, the real Zhang has been drawn by the master of the museum and taught a set of boxing techniques. Good guy, I guess it is really not sober, soft and circle there. So they don't have much hope for this young master Qin who often walks the world. Qin Pingon smiled, pulled up a corner of the blue shirt and long gown, tied it around her waist, came to Su Yuanxia's side, turned her back to the martial arts disciple, and walked the 6 steps of shaking Shanquan first. The young and strong teenagers looked at each other behind them. That's right, I am indeed a friend of my own curator. Xiaomo smiled. A fist is like mountains and rivers, and heaven and earth are connected. Yu Hong, Zhou Haijing and other 9-level martial arts, fortunately to face their own son, it is a punch. Xianxia sat next to Xiaomo and laughed softly. These little rascals, how can you tell the depth, makes Xiaomo laugh. Xiaomo shook his head and said, each has its own high and low, each has its own knowledge. Xianxia gathered the sound into a line and said, there is Lao Xiaomo on this road. What kind of person Qin Pingon is? It's no better to know that if he went out to find himself in Zhang Shanfeng for a drink, he would never bring anyone with him unless he was seriously injured. Xianxia looked at the figure in the green shirt who was getting faster and faster in the martial arts field and smiled. I am getting older. If I am 10 or 20 years earlier, I will definitely drink with Xiaomo and stay drunk. Xiaomo whispered, in the eyes of the sun, Daoist may not really be so young, but I believe that in the eyes of the sun, Daoist will always be the big hero who walks in the wind and rain. The old man rubbed his chin and said with a smile, reasonable. After that, Qin Pingon stayed in the martial arts gym for 3 consecutive days. In the end, Xianxia drove people away and scolded Qin Pingon and Zhang Shan with a smile. Feng's 2 unscrupulous bastards, are they eating and drinking here and waiting for their own death so that they can divide their property? In the past few days, Qin Pingon has taught and fed boxing. The martial arts disciples finally realized that they had a big change in their impressions, and they believed that this young Master Qin was really a master. It is estimated that he can beat at least 2 hall masters. If you open a martial arts center here in the county seat, your business will certainly not be bad, especially for female apprentices, absolutely indispensable. This morning, squatting on the steps, Qin Pingon rubbed his eyebrows while holding a wine bowl, watching Zhang Shanfeng teaching boxing over there. The martial arts disciples were awkwardly throwing their punches, each holding back and laughing. Qin Pingon also tolerated laughing. Before leaving for her journey, Xianxia suddenly asked Qin Pingon to write a plaque in the lobby. She also said that she should be bold and bold. Prepared pen, ink, paper and inkstone. Xiaomo was studying ink beside him. Qin Pingon took his pen to write the 4 big characters of the list. The signature was Luopashen Qin Pingon. He also took out the private seal of one party and sealed it, Qin Shi. Qin Pingon put the pen on the pen holder, turned his head to look at Xianxia and smiled. If you still don't feel the momentum is enough, I can change that 1 to 9. Xianxia laughed loudly and said that it was almost done, otherwise he would fart Dewagwen and couldn't hold it down. The 4 characters of the plaque and the list of books are 1 continent. Xianxia sent all the way to the outside of the county without any muddles, holding her fists and presenting 4 characters to the 3 of them and went all the way. When he arrived at Huaihuang County, Zhang Shanfeng did not live with Qin Pingon on the mountain, but settled down at the Chaotu shop in Qilong Lane. He talked to the old Jia Qin Lingjun and a young Taoist priest named Xianwei. Ming said that he was going to pick up the wind and dust for him, and it was another drink of wine and dimly. Then Zhang Shanfeng surreptitiously asked Qin Lingjun to lead the way, saying he was going to the water god Nyang Nyang temple on the Tiefu River. Qin Lingjun winked and understood that the marriage lottery there was extremely effective. The only problem is that the goddess of water has moved. This is a trivial matter. Uncle Qin can't help taking it to a mountain temple elsewhere in Longzhou just as alive. When Xianwei heard that he was going to the Tiefu River water temple, he would follow, and when he heard that he was going to burn incense with a certain mountain god, he was not happy to go. Qin Pingon took a trip to Mu Ping Alley by himself. First stepped over the wall and landed in the courtyard of Song Jie's house. This was the first time Qin Pingon did. After using the water cloud body to enter Song Jisen's study, there is no need to dig through the boxes and cabinets. In a porcelain vase for Qing offerings placed on the bookshelf, he opens a layer of mysterious and concealed scenery that is not difficult to open. In the end, Qin Pingon was killed. I found a piece of broken porcelain, and besides this, there are also a few pages of yellowed paper left by the Queen Mother Nanzhan of Dali, which are fragments of Tao Ju from Mr. Sanshan Jiuho. Then came to the door of his ancestral house. Qin Ping squatted down to dig up the soil and took out a rouge box that had been buried in the alley for many years. I went to another deserted mountainous area and found a small grave without a monument. These are the inside stories that Aunt Feng was at the Huoshan temple before. There is a stone on the grave that is pressed against the already whitened red paper. It is estimated that someone went to the grave during the Qingming festival this year, and then rain fell on this side after another. And the small graves show signs of adding soil every year. Qin Pingon squatted down and took out 2 pots of wine, 1 pot of glutinous rice fermented from his hometown, and the other pot of rice wine from the mountain, all poured in front of the small grave. After walking a long distance, Qin Pingon glanced back and then Yufeng left. In the night, Qin Pingon moved a small bench and sat near the kiln head of a dragon kiln, and sat alone until dawn. Longzhou has officially changed its name to Chuzhou. The transfer of officials cannot be said to be infrequent. Just like the long history of the Kiln Affairs Supervisory Office, it has been replaced by a new superintendent a long time ago. He is a son of a family from the capital, but it seems that the more he wants to make a difference, the more he can do nothing. Chao Gingxin, the drunkard's officialdom, is not a little bit worse. The ruins of the Moon Palace presented by Xiao Mo came from a round of bright moon, just like an ancient and alternative summer palace. Qin Pingon had already greeted Xiao Mo in advance, and would pass this gift to Lu Xianyang. Xiao Mo had better talk, of course it didn't matter. Qin Pingon waited until dawn, put away the bench and returned to Luopa Mountain. In the previous ceremony at Xingyang Mountain, Qin Pingon asked Guan Yiran to send a secret letter to the hunting envoy Chao Ping. After receiving the letter, Chao Ping stopped attending the celebration and left. It is equivalent to a 300-year covenant between Luopa Mountain and the Chao clan of Shangzhou Kingdom. There is no need for Qin Pinyin and Chao Ping to meet, and there is no need to put that contract on paper. There is no need for black paper and white words. It is just a 2-party agreement. There is a tacit agreement between gentlemen. Luopa Mountain will protect Chao's incense, and there will be no, some worst results. Both parties knew this well. The so-called accident was not that the Chao family lost his hereditary status as the upper pillar country, but the kind of family destruction in the true sense and the severance of incense. Although this possibility is extremely small, Qin Pingon started his letter with this, but he was even more sincere. Within 300 years, the Chao family can send pure martial arts or cultivating embryos to Luopa Mountain to practice peacefully in the mountains, and Luopa Mountain will cultivate them carefully. If this matter is too revealing, it is easy to be jealous by the Song court. Qin Pingon can also secretly send those candidates to places such as Taihui Jianzong in Luzhou, Beiju, or the Dragon Elephant on the South Pazuzu. Jianzong. Chao Ping soon made Qin Pingon feel Chao's vigorous actions. Because the Chao family has quietly sent 2 people to Luopashan, 2 children surnamed Chao and a pair of young girls. Young Chao Yin, whose name is Fengxing, is a descendant of the Chao family. She is a sword-repairing embryo. The girl is given the surname is Chao and the nickname is Wutong. Now she is a martial artist in the 4 realms and she has a pretty good foundation. According to the rules of the wealthy family, the girl is Chao Yin's maid and also a dead soldier. The 2 were placed in a mansion in the back mountain of Luopa Mountain by Zhu Lian. Cui Dongshan pointed out the practice of young Chao Yin and gave back a few cheats on the mountain. As for Chao Yang, Sui Yu and Pei Qian had taught her a few punches before. Qin Pingon wanted to go to the mansion there by himself, but he hesitated while seeing the 2 of them chatting, but let Qin Lingjun call them to come over and meet at the stone table by the cliff. The teenagers and girls rushed to the mountain together. They saw the bamboo tower first and then they saw the green shirt, standing on the edge of the cliff with a graceful demeanor. The man smiled at them and nodded in greeting. Chao Yin walked forward quickly and the girl followed behind. The young man saluted. Chao Yin pays homage to the mountain lord. The girl stood a step behind Chao Yin. She just bowed her head and folded her hands and clasped her fists. She hadn't gotten up for a long time with this famous sect master. Due to some unwritten rules, she kept her duty and did not have a self-registration number. The blue shirt in front of the eyes is a 40-year-old sword fairy in the upper 5 realms. Is still a martial artist who has stood on the top of the world. Qin Pingon stretched out a hand and said with a smile, Chao Yin, Chao Yang, all sit down. A pair of young girls who looked like Biren took their seats one after another. Qin Pingon sat down and asked, is it still used to living in the mountains? Chao Yin is young and mature with a calm temperament, he replied stubbornly, going back to the mountain, I can't live better. Qin Pingon smiled and said, in Luopa Mountain you don't need to be too cautious. You can just walk around and take a look while practicing boxing. The girl is a person who learns boxing and martial arts. Facing this boundless martial artist, she is actually more in awe than Chao Yin. Feng is a god. So today when she meets Qin Pingyuan, it is like meeting a living with respect and respect. I heard that he was coming to see this mountain lord, but Chao Yang was actually confused and his mind was muddled. If it weren't for coming from the back mountain to the edge of the Zhulu cliff, there would still be a long stretch of mountain road to walk, so that she could calm down her mood quickly. It is estimated that the question and answer will be lost when it comes to this side. Qin Pingyuan didn't talk much with them. After they left, he hesitated and let Zhongli live a long time. He called Pei Qian, who was staying in the lotus flower-blessed land, back to Luopa Mountain, saying that he was waiting for her on the second floor of the bamboo building. Go up the stairs and came to the corridor on the second floor. Qin Pingyuan sat at the door, took off his cloth shoes and placed it outside. I have noticed the strangeness of Pei Qian. Previously, Luopa Mountain watched Jinyang Mountain. Pei Qian said something, and when he returned to Luopa Mountain he broke the border, but it dragged on again and again. Although the distance to that time was not long before the actual date, Qin Pingyuan did not dare to take it lightly. As a pure taker, he is actually in pressure. A 9-realm Wufu can already break the bottleneck but deliberately suppress it. If he is careless, there will be a big hidden danger. Who borrowed your courage? Am I the master? Qin Pingyuan walked into the house, empty, and began to close his eyes to rest. In the past he traveled alone to Luzhou in Beiju, but was inexplicably asked about a boxing. Qin Pingyuan almost mistakenly thought he was going to die at that time. The person who asked him indiscriminately turned out to be the old housekeeper who was changing his name in the Sasa villa, Wu Fengjia, his real name Guyu, and a member of the Great Seal dynasty. In the past, one of the 3 native martial artists of Luzhou in Beiju once used double fists to disperse the dynasty vassal 10-7 immortal masters, all of which were single-handedly expelled by this pure martial artist. Guyu is the ancestor of shaking Shanquan. When he received the punches by himself, he walked and handed the punches, nearly 1.6 million punches. In order to test his own depth, Guyu punched hard and made more sense. The old man once said that there are thousands of boxing skills to die, and the real boxing is to live out a kind of boxing. Of course, Guyu also said a rhetoric that fits well with the realm of Shanshan boxing master and ending Wufu. Roughly means that he does not talk about the level of Tui Cheng's boxing skills, but the fact that he boxing is normal. Replacing him with him can ensure that Qin Pingyuan is the strongest. Qin Pingyuan put away his thoughts and opened his eyes. Pei Qian is here. She took off her boots at the door and hesitated to walk into the house. Qin Pingyuan rolled up his sleeves and said solemnly, I will not be overwhelmed, I will decide the winner. Pei Qian remained silent and motionless. Qin Pingyuan is exactly the same as Guyu and himself in the past, bending his knees slightly, twisting his wrists towards himself, passing a fist forward and slowly saying, I'll ask you a fist with shaking mountain fist. Pei Qian looked a little flustered, staring at his master in a daze. The most familiar master made her feel a little strange. Qin Pingyuan angrily said, Pei Qian, if you are against others, you are already dead right now. Pei Qian just didn't speak, and she didn't have the intention to gather fists. Qin Pingyuan kicked the ground as fast as thunder, and the whole bamboo building shook violently, and he hit the door of Pei Qian's face. Pei Qian only retreated 2 steps, leaning back against the wall. Qin Pingyuan almost hit her forehead with a punch, forcibly closed the fist and laughed again. In the end, only distressed, he said helplessly, forget it. Pei Qian grinned. Qin Pingyuan bends his fingers and a chestnut beats Pei Qian to hold his head. Seeing that the master had gone to the door, sitting down and putting on cloth shoes, Pei Qian was relieved all of a sudden. Pai Dian sat down with the master and laughed softly. Master, I'm telling the truth. 3 punches, at most 5 punches, it's over. Qin Pingyuan said in a bad mood, you know? The old man in a blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes bent his knees slightly, twisted his wrists, grasped his fist and slowly handed it forward, making a fist with one hand but retracting. I shake the mountain fist, the most heavy punches against the enemy, 1 punch. Keep your mind, so even if you meet the enemy's 3 masters, as long as your fist is not scattered, you can still make another punch. Let your immortal spell reach the sky, the mountain presses my top, I shake the mountain fist and open the mountain. This is me at the time of Guyu's 7 realms. He had this realization before he could write the preface of this boxing book. If you, Qin Pingyuan, want to go higher than me in the future, you should have this big idea of being completely ignorant of the heights of the world. At the edge of the big pit, A blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes appeared. It was the old martial artist. Wu Fengjiao, or leaving aside Li Er, who was born out of the sky. He is one of the 3 native martial artists of Luzhou in Beiju, Guyu of the Great Seal dynasty. The Great Seal dynasty in the surrounding countries. Why is there only one Jinlin Palace where the weak Yuaning sits? And why is the Jinlin Palace so weak that it will be regarded as a waste hill that has never been heard before by the Duckweed Sword Lake? It was Wu Fu Guyu who beat the gods on the mountains of a dozen countries with double fists, and almost all of them were expelled from the country. Guyu once said, "The heavens are big and the earth is big, the gods are gone." Huge words must have feats to be a true hero. The old man squatted down and said with a smile, "Of course I am not called Wu Fengjia. I was just walking the rivers and lakes when I was young. It was the name of a dead knight. He died in order to save a roadside beggar who was crushed by wheels. On the spot. The little lame who has been practicing boxing all his life, just wanted to prove one thing to this lifesaver. In order to save a pus-covered orphan, a martial artist took his own life. It's worth it." Guyu's pseudonym was actually someone else's name. He was just a martial artist from all over the world. He died in order to save a roadside beggar. So after Guyu became famous, as long as he was away from home, he would use this name to compete with the Wufu on the mountain. Just to prove one thing, the martial artist of the 4 realms back then took his life for a child covered in rotten pus. Not so. Not worth it. Qin Pingon stood by the railing, turned his head and looked at the town. Is like Mr. Qi protecting a Liju cave sky. The growth of the younger generation in every small town can prove one more point. And this matter is not so unworthy. Many young people always feel that the sky is big and the earth is mine, and they only dare to see if I want it or not. Only after adulthood, bold words require feats to be considered a true hero. So the Confucian temple was discussing matters, and during the confrontation between the 2 worlds, they wore a green shirt and fought as soon as they spoke. So the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi will never just say something lighthearted just because he has returned to Howren world. Then I will go to the wild world, drag and drop the river, interrupt the fairy hair city, cut the moon mountain with the sword, and blade the head of the peak sword repair of the ascendant realm. Qin Pingon patted Pei Qian's hairdo on top of his head and said softly, "Go back to the lotus flower fortune, you can break the border tomorrow." In fact, I know why Pei Qian must be so pressured. Is to wait for a certain day. Because Senior Cui Qing left on this day. The old man did not give any last words in a small temple in the capital of Nanyuan State. Seems that all the truths are being taught in the bamboo building. Pei Qian nodded and returned to the Uwafa land. Did not go directly to Nanyuan National Capital City, but chose a secluded area. She landed straight in a straight line and the earth shook. Flying all the way, every time the water crosses the water, every mountain is over the mountain, and occasionally resting by the water, Pei Qian will catch a few fish and stew in the pot, start the fire to cook the rice and the fish soup. It is indeed a bit salty. In the night, I strolled through the familiar and unfamiliar Nanyuan National Capital City, walked through the streets and alleys, saw the 2 stone lions squatting at the door, and finally came to the Xianxia temple in Nanyuan country. Pei Qian sat on the steps and stared blankly into the corridor. She was silent for a long time. Wait until the sky has white fish belly, a figure rises from the ground and goes to the sky. Please take care of a blessed land for a long life and open the door of lotus root blessed land. Pei Qian said in a deep voice, "Open the door." Howren Jiazus 9 share martial arts. There are also 2 majestic martial arts from the Wild World and the Qingming World, flocking to the Luopa Mountain and into the lotus flower blessed land. Was smashed one by Pei Qian in a drumming style. A blessed world, martial arts fall to the world like majestic rain. Near the gate of Fudi on the horizon, Qin Pingon has sleeves with both hands. Beside him is a Long Life in a snow-white robe. Long Life smiled and said, "Pei Qian's martial arts broke through, really unreasonable." Qin Pingon looked indifferent and said, "It's not surprising after all, it's my big disciple." From the corner of Changming's eyes, he caught a glimpse of this young mountain master deliberately speaking understatement, but the smile between his eyebrows was like, "My girl is the best in the world, do you still need to say this kind of thing? Old father." Zhang Li Changming joked, "I will be sacked in the middle of the night and the mountain owner can call me." Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, "You have to stop me at that time and pay attention to the strength of kicking people." A group of 3 people visited Hongzhou town, and Qin Pingon bought a few books from the shopkeeper Li Jin at the bookstore. Today the millet grain did not carry the golden pole, nor did he carry the green bamboo stick but the cloth bag slung. On the mountain road, the millet grains are walking in the forefront, twisting a golden melon seed with 2 fingers, holding it high, shaking his head and shaking his head, never tire of it. In the twilight, the water god temple is about to close. Change the temple blessing. She used to be an old woman, but now she is a simple woman. Qin Pinyin couldn't laugh or cry when he saw the woman whose eyebrows were vaguely familiar. This jade liquid river empress is really ubiquitous. The woman in front of him who served as the new temple blessing he really knew. In fact, she was still appear 2 or 3 years older than Qin Pingon. Because he is a small town native in Huaihuang County, his surname is Liu, but his relationship with Liu on Fulu Street has long been estranged, and he can't claim any relatives. The person she married was also a native of her hometown. She worked as a kiln worker in Longyao, but was far away from the kiln where Qin Pingon was an apprentice. Their family sold the house in the early years and moved to Zhouqing with the family. A wealthy day that I didn't even dare to think about before. The woman was a little uncertain. With a bit of joy on her face, she tentatively asked, "Is it Qin from the Nipe Lane? Pingon?" A few years ago about Mo was the ancestor of Jida. She was actually regarded as the goddess of the water god, and she was half a mountain man. Although she had never practiced immortality, she had seen a lot of immortal masters. There are quite a few noble ladies with official hats and wearing gold and jade. 2 of them are still the legendary ladies. Really made her excited at first, but later women are not rare to go to Longzhou City to show off. Every time a man goes out to drink, he will have a blushing face, saying that he is good fortune and beg a glorious daughter-in-law. You are not worse than the Gu family widow in Mud Bottle Alley. Nowadays, the man who has never read a book will learn how to draw words from a talented person, as if picking up a string of 4 words from a sauerkraut jar. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded and shouted out the other's name. "Yeme, I haven't seen each other for many years. I only heard that your family moved to Longzhou City before, but I didn't expect you to be here." In the past, the locals in small towns used to marry early, and many women would marry when they were 14 or 5. She asked, "Qin Pingon, is this your girl?" Before she became a temple blessing, she had only heard fragmentary news about the orphan in Nipping Lane in front of her. It was said that Qin Pingon had met the foreign town through her friend Lu Xianyang after being an improper apprenticeship as a kiln worker in his early years. Master Ruan, a human blacksmith, somehow earned his first sum of money and bought a few hills to the west. Somehow later he entered the eyes of the mountain of Piyun Mountain again, and he became even more magnanimous. Qin Pingon laughed dumbfounded, and this was troublesome, so he had to touch the head of the millet grain. Xiaomi Li smiled while covering her mouth, her eyes narrowed with crescent moons. "This new title that fell from the sky, we don't admit it or deny it." The woman asked, "Are you here to burn incense?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "I have to trouble you Feijian to pass on the Ye Jiangshui mansion. I have something to do with Yi Qingzhu." The woman was a little surprised, hesitated for a moment and persuaded, "Qin Pinyin, I'm still in charge of things now, and I can offer some talismans and drive to help you drive the water to the water mansion." Although Qin Pingon is definitely not bad now, he can do business in partnership with Beiyue Mountain Monarch. The new Jiadu, who is rich in wealth. I heard that Qin Pingon has separate accounts. However, the officialdom of Xianshui has many taboos and a lot of attention. What's more, the goddess of water in her own family, according to the Golden Jade genealogy issued by the Dali court in the past years, from the 4th rank is very high. Is the boundary of Longzhou, so it is inconspicuous. Otherwise, if it is left in the officialdom of the small vassal country, it will be a real official in the frontier. The man still insisted on his own opinion. "Just spread the letter to the water mansion. I will be here waiting for the god of water empress." The woman is a bit lost. The boy in Mud Bottle Alley before, it seems that this is not the case. Qin Pingon is not good at explaining anything. If she goes directly to the Shui mansion, her temple wish will be in vain. But if she was asked to fly the sword to spread the letter, Yi Qingzhu would have to read her love. This water empress would think it's not worth asking you to be a temple blessing. Qin Pingon sat on the steps outside the gate of the water god temple. The millet grain scratched his face, pulling his head listless. "I always feel that it is causing trouble to the good guys. In fact, at the beginning she just wanted to play around in Red Candle Town and then she could go home. But the good man Shanju just shook her head and didn't agree. She could no longer hold his leg like she did in the past, and Mr. Xiaomo is right next to her. Xiaomo did not sit beside Qin Pingyun but on the far right. In this way the millet grain sits in the middle. On the surface of the river, the mist rose, and the goddess of water Yi Qingzhu came from the family shrine alone. Her face was pale and she couldn't hide her face in a hurry. Especially when she saw the man in green shirt sitting on the steps at the entrance of her family's shrine, her back became even more cold. Yi Qingzhu smiled happily and said to the woman at the temple, "You go back inside first, I want to talk to Mr. Qin." The temple wished the woman, confused and chatting about things, why not go to the temple to chat? Don't pay attention to the hospitality? It is also good to prepare some fruits and drinks for yourself. It's just that she didn't dare to rebel against the water and return to the temple. After crossing the threshold, she quietly turned her head and glanced at the back of the blue shirt. The woman was a little lost for a while. For so many years she occasionally thought, one day when she reunited with the boy in Mud Bottle Alley, would the other party feel a little regretful? It's just that she thought about it carefully and then she stopped thinking about it at Xinhu. In the end she was still a little worried and a little relieved. The same age in Mud Bottle Alley back then about Mo is really kind and rewarding, and finally he doesn't have to live so hard. Because when the woman was still an unmarried girl, she used to be under the lamp with her mother. And the mother was sewing clothes while chatting about her parents' short-term relationship. It's all trivial, and while talking I somehow talked about the young man who became an apprentice kiln worker. He often helped their family with some cropping work. Every time he spoke actively or when he was busy in farming he always talked about it. We'll pass the field by accident. Moreover, their rice fields always have no worries about running out of water when they are grabbing water. In most people, going to Tianbian twice in the evening is considered to be the sky, but there is a unique person not like this and often staying at Tianlong for the whole night. The reason for this seems to be because the girl's mother used to go to Mud Bottle Alley to help with 2 funerals. In fact, in small towns, neighbors in the neighborhood, as long as they are not enemies, they will often help. The old woman said that the family named Qin in Ni Ping Alley are all good people. He also said that such a good boy should not have had such a hard time. Talking that night, the last words of the mother's mother were still fresh in the woman's memory. The child was so bitter and gone, so on the side of us outsiders we will keep smiling. There is a saying in my hometown and small town, never morally kill. It means that a person is very polite and never tells right or wrong. Qin Pingyun sat on the steps looking at the Yi Qingzhu. Yi Qingzhu can't wait to dig a hole to drill down. The hermit of the fallen mountain sits and stands by himself. Doesn't it seem to be condescending? But I can't just sit on the ground. Looked up with Xiaomo almost at the same time, looking at the sky above Luopa Mountain. A slender sword light fell. Qin Pingyun stood up, and before he could speak, Yi Qingzhu took a step back subconsciously. Qin Pingyun smiled and said, "It's okay, I'm here to meet thee of water tonight. My neighbor hasn't been there for many years. It's not ceremonial. Turning back to our Luopashan guest, I will do my best as a landlord and invite the goddess of water to drink." Yi Qingzhu wanted to say that I would not go. But she nodded silently. Actually, Qin Pingyun didn't really want to deal with her and Shuifu. In the final analysis, it still depends on the meaning of millet grains. When I walked to the water god temple along the way, Xiaomi Li's brows were always frowning, and he wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. That was the answer. Qin Pingyun bid farewell with fists. Yi Qingzhu hurriedly gave a blessing. He didn't die and he hadn't been beaten. It seems that it is useful to go to other temples and temples to burn incense and pray for blessing. As for going to Luopashan as a guest, it's very simple, drag the word. Xiaomo couldn't help but laugh. This water empress was mixed for this, probably because she really knew what it was like to suffer. Returning to the original road to Hongzhou town, Qin Pingyun laughed. After Ning Yao returned to Feishing City, he actually let Guizhujiu come to Howren World. Qin Pingyun touched the head of the millet grain and asked, "Next time you look at the door, the of water will be a guest, what should you do?" Xiaomi Li shook his 2 small arms and laughed. "I'm so courageous, even if there is only one person at the door, it's all the same, I still have to ask the goddess of water to drink tea." Qin Pingyun smiled and asked, "Are there melon seeds to serve guests?" Millet grains frowned and immediately smiled. "What do you want? I have a long temper and I want give me a seed." Qin Pingyun smiled and said, "You're so grudges?" The millet grains bounced around, shaking their heads and wailing, "The big water monster of Dumb Lake, I am fierce." There are a lot of people coming to join in the fun at the Luopa Mangosteen Tower. Only Pei Qian is the most dull and speechless. Guizhuzhou blinked his eyes. Not good, the master sister is not short now. Bai Xian immediately spoke to this guy who claimed to be a disciple of the hermit, saying that Guizhuzhou would ask you to help, and help yourself be a peacemaker with Pei Qian. As long as things are done, there will be a good return. Guizhuzhou nodded and agreed, a trivial matter. She leaped forward on one toe and handed out a palm in the air. Pei Qian's face was embarrassed and she moved stiffly to raise her palm, so when the two sides passed by she gave her a light palm once. The figure of the young girl fell behind Pei Qian, standing still with her back facing Pei Qian, and said in a deep voice, "Master sister, you have sold me a face and your grievance with Bai Xian has been wiped out." How? Pei Qian put away his palm, rubbed his forehead. "Oh, okay." Guizhuzhou walked up to Pei Qian and began to circle Pei Qian. Finally, she reached out to cover her mouth and whispered in Pei Qian's ear, "Master sister is not a small boy." Pei Qian rolled his eyes. Bai Xian made up his mind he would follow Guizhuzhou in the future. What kind of money? Seeing that Pei Qian squinted at himself again with that signature gesture, Bai Xian immediately shrank his neck and looked up at the moon. Although it was known that Guizhuzhou had come to Luopa Mountain, Qin Pingon did not return immediately. Instead, Xiaomo took the millet grains back first and went to the town alone. Walking in the alley of mud bottles, Qin Pingon was alone. He did not stop at his ancestral house, but walked to the ancestral house of Gus family. There was once a young woman who was not yet a woman. A family of 3 lived here. After her father and mother passed away, she married a foreigner named Gu. So later she killed a man and became a widow. Many people in the town said that she was to blame because she was killed by an orphan from the 2 houses not far away. In the early years the child died one after another. She should know the importance, and she even dared to help in the funeral, even guarding the spirit. Later she took the child and lived a difficult life, and some people started to say weird things, saying wait and see, sooner or later even the lone seedling of your family will be killed by the surname Chen sooner or later. Qin Pingon took a step back, leaning back against the wall and looking at the old house that is now empty. One time in the middle of the night, when he had not been an apprentice as a kiln worker, he was a thin teenager who was sleeping, and he immediately heard the sound from the alley. Someone outside seemed to be in a hurry and even fell down, and there was a heart-piercing cry. The teenager didn't care about putting on straw sandals, so he ran out barefoot. Touched the hot forehead of the child and then touched the pulse. The teenager knows that even if he only has a rough understanding of pharmacology. First let the woman who was just crying not worry, and then took the child from the woman. He hugged the child and ran all the way to Yang's shop. The teenager holding the child in both hands, knocking on the door of Yang's shop with his forehead vigorously. In the middle of the night, there was no response, and the sweaty teenager began to kick with his feet. Finally let an old man living in the backyard open the door with his clothes, and screamed at the young man who kicked the door loudly at something uncultivated in a hurry to reincarnate. But Grandpa Yang finally saved the little slug. Later I met Lu Xianyang. Gukin is a child with a cool temperament since he was a child. This little slug is unfamiliar with him. This is not even said by outsiders but by Lu Xianyang. However, Lu Xianyang also said that no matter what, Gukin is alone with you, still very affectionate. Qin Pingon closed his eyes. When I was young I wore linen and filial piety twice to see off my parents. There was that young woman in the team. Later she opened the door that time. No matter what kind of person she becomes in the future. So even if the sky falls, don't even think of Gukan's death in front of me. I can die but Gukan will not die. Qin Pingan's sleeves shook and he turned into a rainbow and fell directly into the backyard of Yang's shop. Entering the wing room, Li Huai said, only a letter was left on the table. The content of the letter is only one sentence. People take food as their heaven. Are you full? Qin Pingon remained silent, but only put the letter in his sleeve. There is a brand new dry tobacco rod and a bag of tobacco on the table. Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment. With the help of his memory he lit up the dry smoke. In the end he was choked with just one bite and coughed endlessly. The room was filled with smoke for a while. Is no different. Qin Pingon bites the scalp and takes a sip of smoke. His mood is ups and downs and there are many memories. For some reason in an instant old man Yang's voice rang in the heart of the lake. Qin Pingon, in your eyes all the people who died in vain in the book Jin who actually ended up very well, not only in this life or the next life, but also have extra opportunities and blessings. Cui Huang has made arrangements for this matter without exception. Cui Yang had seen and talked about those people before and after their deaths, and each had their own desires. Therefore some people's tragic deaths were blindfolds. In fact, they have long been given a share of money or practice opportunities. Some people are willing to die and have to get out of the bitter sea of Shujian Lake and get a stable afterlife. Cui Yang once came here to explain the matter to me, saying that he wanted a person who originally thought he had a clear conscience to be guilty of this for the rest of his life. There must be a lot of concern so that he won't be able to climb higher in the future and he will become less and more personal, just because I feel I have never owed the world the slightest amount. Therefore he has to smash a big hole in your heart and let you spend your entire life working hard to repair it. If you are a smart person who has been wise since childhood, you have to be mediocre. Even if you already know the truth at this moment, so what? You will still carry that lingering guilt and continue on the road of life. Qin Pingon finally left the house holding a dry tobacco pole, sitting on the bench under the eaves, cocked his legs, squinted his eyes and vomited. The last words of the old man Yang said that the great origin of the Tao comes from the sky does not change, the Tao does not change, the world is beautiful with stars and moons and this walk is good and safe.